The silence at 3 in the morning has a weight to it. Marcus Webb knew this better than most men. He sat alone in the Tactical Operations Center at Forward Operating Base Lightning, Kandahar Province, Afghanistan, watching dust particles drift through the blue glow of computer monitors. Outside, the temperature had dropped to 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside, it felt colder. He was 34 years old. This was his fourth deployment. 11 men whose names he knew by heart were now names on a wall back at Fort Bragg. The letter in front of him began the same way the previous 46 had begun. Dear Rachel, if you're reading this, he never sent them. Couldn't, because sending them meant admitting he might not come back. And admitting that meant the fear won. The door opened without sound. Master Chief Ray Kowalski moved like a man who'd learned to walk quietly in places where noise meant death. He was 52, gray at the temples, carrying his father's dog tags around his neck alongside his own. His father had died in Mogadishu in 1993 during the Battle of the Black Sea. Gothic Serpent, the mission that became Black Hawk Down. Some weights get passed down through generations. Neither man spoke for a full minute. Ray pulled out a pack of Marlboro Reds, contraband in a no-smoking facility, and offered one to Marcus. They lit up in defiance of regulations that seemed meaningless when you'd already watched good men die following other regulations. The smoke hung in the stale air between them. Ray broke the silence first. His voice carried the gravel of a man who'd been screaming orders over gunfire for 3 decades. Webb, I'm assigning you a new sniper. Owen Blake got hit by an IED yesterday. He's alive, but his femur's shattered in 4 places. He's done. Marcus took a long drag, let the nicotine burn his lungs. Owen Blake had been solid, professional, the kind of shooter who could put a round through a bottle cap at 800 meters in a crosswind. Losing him meant recalibrating everything, relearning trust, rebuilding the invisible thread that connects a sniper to their spotter. Who's replacing him? Sarah McKenna. The name hung in the air like the smoke. The woman? Yeah. Marcus didn't react the way Ray might have expected. He'd been in Takur Ghar back in 2002 when Sergeant Neil Chapman took 7 rounds to the chest and kept fighting. He'd carried Chapman's body 3 kilometers through Taliban fire because leaving him wasn't an option. He'd seen men half his size do things that defied physics and logic. He'd seen cowards built like linebackers. Size meant nothing. Gender meant even less. Can she shoot? Yes. Can she make hard calls? Ray paused, and in that pause, Marcus understood everything he needed to know. I don't know. That's what you'll find out. Marcus crushed his cigarette against the metal desk, watching the ember die. When does she arrive? 0600, 3 hours. He nodded. 3 hours to sleep, or 3 hours to stare at the ceiling and think about the 47 unsent letters to a wife who was slowly becoming a stranger. He chose the ceiling. Sarah McKenna arrived at Forward Operating Base Lightning as the sun broke over the Hindu Kush Mountains, turning the sky the color of blood and copper. She stepped off the Chinook helicopter with 30 pounds of gear on her back, her M110 SAS rifle in a hard case, and the kind of silence that made other soldiers nervous. She was 4 feet 11 inches tall. In a world of men who averaged 6 feet and change, she looked like an administrative error. But Marcus Webb had learned long ago that the deadliest things in Afghanistan were rarely the ones you saw coming. He watched her from the operations tent as she moved across the landing zone. She didn't acknowledge the stares, didn't react to the whispered comments from the younger privates who hadn't yet learned that survival depended on keeping your mouth shut and your eyes open. She checked her gear with the methodical precision of someone performing a religious ritual. Rifle, ammunition, optics, rangefinder, weather meter, everything in its place. Everything verified twice. Marcus approached as she finished her inventory. Up close, he could see the details that distance had hidden. Her hands were calloused in the specific pattern of someone who'd spent thousands of hours behind a rifle. Her eyes had that 1,000-yard stare, the one you couldn't fake, the one that came from looking through a scope at another human being and making the conscious decision to end their existence. I'm your spotter, he said. She looked up at him. Her voice was flat, empty of inflection. I know who you are. Takur Ghar, 2002. You carried Sergeant Chapman's body 3 clicks under fire. Congressional testimony stated you performed 47 minutes of combat rescue under sustained enemy contact. Marcus felt something cold move through his chest. Most people knew the broad strokes of Takur Ghar. Few knew the details. Fewer still could recite them with that kind of precision. Ancient history, he said. Nothing's ancient in this war, she replied. We keep repeating it. There was no warmth in her words, no attempt at connection, just statement of fact. Marcus understood. She was protecting herself. Caring got you killed. Distance kept you functional. They stood in the morning sun, two soldiers who understood that the hardest part of war wasn't the fighting, it was the coming home. Private First Class Jimmy Brennan was 22 years old and still believed the world made sense. He approached Sarah that afternoon with the kind of eager friendliness that marked him as either very brave or very naive. Marcus, watching from 20 meters away, suspected it was the latter. Hey, welcome to the team. Jimmy's smile was genuine, uncomplicated. Back home in Ohio, he had a wife named Jennifer and a 3-month-old daughter named Emma. He carried their photo in a waterproof case over his heart. Insurance, he called it. God wouldn't let a bullet hit his daughter's face. Sarah barely acknowledged him. She was field stripping her rifle, laying out each component with surgical precision. Bolt carrier group, gas piston, trigger assembly, each piece cleaned, inspected, reassembled. The work of someone who understood that a malfunction at the wrong moment meant death. Jimmy's smile faltered. He looked at Marcus, confused. Marcus gave him a slight shake of the head. Let it go. Not everyone needed to be friends. Some people just needed to be professional. But Jimmy was young enough to still believe in camaraderie. We got a briefing at 1400 hours. Mission planning. Thought you should know. Sarah didn't look up. I know. I read the operations order at 0700. Jimmy stood there for another awkward moment, then retreated. Marcus found him later behind the supply tent, looking lost. Did I do something wrong? No. She barely talked to me. Marcus lit another cigarette, his third of the day. Some people carry weight different than others. She's carrying hers. Give her space. What's she carrying? Marcus looked at the younger man, saw the innocence that another 6 months in country would burn away. Same thing we all are. The dead. The briefing room at 1400 hours smelled like stale coffee and the particular kind of anxiety that comes before dangerous work. Colonel Bruce Hardwick stood at the front, 58 years old, Gulf War veteran, 3 Bronze Stars, and eyes that looked through people rather than at them. He'd been in country for 8 months and had never left the wire. His wars were fought with PowerPoint slides and satellite imagery. The target's name was Zulfikar, Taliban commander, mid-50s, operating out of Panjwai district. Intelligence suggested he was coordinating attacks on NATO supply routes. The photograph on the screen showed a bearded man in traditional dress, face weathered by decades of sun and war. Hardwick's voice had the practiced cadence of someone who'd given the same speech 100 times. Your mission is observation and reporting. Rules of engagement are clear. You observe, you document, you do not engage unless you have confirmed hostile action and imminent threat to NATO forces. Lieutenant Nathan Cross raised his hand. He was 29, West Point graduate, still believed the system worked if you followed the rules. Afghanistan would teach him otherwise. Sir, what's the confidence level on this intelligence? Hardwick's jaw tightened slightly. Adequate. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Adequate was military speak for we're not really sure, but we need to do something. He'd heard adequate before. Back in 2009, adequate intelligence had led his team to the wrong compound. 4 civilians dead. One of them was a 6-year-old boy. Marcus still saw his face some nights when sleep wouldn't come. Sarah sat in the back row, silent, studying the terrain map spread across the table. Marcus watched her trace elevation lines with her finger, calculating fields of fire, identifying dead space, planning for variables that most shooters wouldn't consider until they were in position. She was 3 steps ahead, always. After the briefing, Marcus found her outside, staring at the mountains in the distance. You have concerns about the intel? She didn't look at him. Intel's always shaky. That's not the concern. What is? She pulled out a small notebook, the kind you could buy at any Army PX, filled with dense handwriting and sketch diagrams. The photo they showed us, the man's stance, the way he distributes his weight, that suggests a lower body injury, probably left leg. Old wound, Soviet era if I had to guess. Compensated gait pattern. Marcus looked at her. So when we get eyes on target, I'll know if it's the right man or not. Body language doesn't lie, intel does. The insertion came on December 23rd at 0400 hours. 2 Chinook helicopters, rotors beating the frozen air, carrying Alpha Team into the mountains south of Kandahar. Marcus sat across from Sarah in the troop compartment, watching her go through her pre-mission ritual. Eyes closed, breathing slow and controlled, hands resting on her rifle case. Meditation or prayer, he couldn't tell. Maybe both. Jimmy Brennan sat next to him, gripping his M249 saw like a security blanket. The kid was scared. Good. Fear kept you alert. It was the fearless ones who got killed doing stupid things. The helicopter banked hard left, dropping altitude fast. Marcus's stomach lifted into his chest. He'd made this flight dozens of times and it never got comfortable. The moment between the safety of the air and the danger of the ground stretched out like eternity. They touched down in a valley 8 clicks from the target area. The temperature had dropped to 23 degrees. Wind gusted at 15 miles per hour, carrying the smell of snow and old smoke from distant cooking fires. The team moved out immediately, 10 men in tactical column, night vision turning the world into shades of green and gray. Sarah moved with the efficiency of someone half her size and twice her experience. Her ruck weighed 75 pounds, same as everyone else's. No special treatment, no accommodations. She loaded it herself, refused help, and set a pace that left some of the bigger men struggling to keep up. Not stronger, smarter, weight distributed correctly, pace controlled, energy conserved. After 3 hours of movement through terrain that wanted to kill him, Jimmy Brennan started to flag. His ruck straps had loosened, throwing off his center of gravity. Each step became a struggle. Marcus could see the kid starting to spiral, that mental death loop where exhaustion fed doubt, fed exhaustion. Sarah appeared next to him without a word. She dropped her own ruck, adjusted Jimmy's straps, redistributed 10 pounds of his gear into her own pack. Jimmy started to protest. "You don't have to do that." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it so you don't slow us down and get us killed." She picked up her ruck, now 85 pounds, and kept moving. Jimmy looked at Marcus, something like shame on his face. Marcus just shrugged. "She's honest. Brutal but honest. You can work with that." They reached the ridgeline at 0 to 800 hours, just as the sun began to burn off the morning haze. The valley below stretched out like a relief map from a military academy classroom. Sarah and Marcus moved forward to establish the overwatch position, while the rest of the team dug in defensive positions 80 meters back. The spot Sarah chose would have taken Marcus another 20 minutes to find. It offered clear sight lines to 3 different approach routes, natural cover from return fire, and a withdrawal path that didn't silhouette them against the skyline. Professional didn't cover it. This was artistry. They set up in silence. Sarah assembled her rifle with the practiced movements of someone who could do it blindfolded. M110 semi-automatic sniper system, caliber 7.62 millimeter NATO, effective range 800 meters, maximum range 1,200 meters if you knew what you were doing and had a little luck. Loophole Mark 4 scope, and PVS 27 thermal clip-on for night at work. Kestrel 5700 elite weather meter clipped to her vest. Marcus established the spotting scope. 60 power magnification. He ranged key terrain features. 820 meters to the suspected compound, 943 meters to the road intersection, 1,118 meters to the far ridgeline. Every distance memorized, every calculation pre-made. Sarah pulled out her data book and began recording environmental conditions. Wind speed, direction, temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, the Coriolis effect at this latitude. Variables that most people didn't even know existed. Variables that could make the difference between a hit and a miss, between mission success and another name on a wall. Marcus broke the silence. "You always this thorough?" She didn't look up from her notes. "My father taught me. Measure twice, shoot once." "Your father a sniper?" "Montana rancher. Same principle. You don't waste bullets on coyotes." Marcus smiled. First time in weeks. He liked the simplicity of that worldview. Every shot counted. Every decision mattered. "Why'd you join?" She finished writing, closed the data book. "Same reason you did." Seemed like a good idea at the time. Marcus laughed out loud. The sound felt foreign in his throat. Strange. When was the last time he'd actually laughed? He couldn't remember. "That's the realest answer I've heard in 4 deployments." They settled into the rhythm of Overwatch. One person on the scope, one person resting but alert. Switch every hour. Hydrate, eat, maintain. The hours bled together in the way they do when you're hunting something that might not come. At noon, Sarah spoke without moving her eye from the scope. "You married?" Yeah. Kids? One, Tyler, 6 years old. You miss them? Marcus thought about the 47 unsent letters, about Rachel's voice on their last call, thin and tired, about Tyler asking when Daddy was coming home and Marcus not having an answer. Every day. Why do you keep coming back? Because I'm good at this. And if I stop, someone less good takes my place. More mistakes get made. More people die. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. That's what I tell myself too. At 14:30 hours, the convoy appeared. 3 Toyota Hilux pickup trucks, modified with heavy machine guns mounted in the beds. Technical trucks, they called them. Improvised fighting vehicles that had been killing people in this part of the world since before Marcus was born. Sarah's voice was calm, clinical. I count 8 military-age males. Vehicle 2, rear seat, possible high-value target. He's wearing body armor under his clothing. You can see the bulk. See the way. Marcus confirmed through the spotting scope. The man in vehicle 2 matched the general description. Bearded, 50s, traditional dress, but something was off. Wait, what? He's got 2 kids with him. Sarah went still. Confirmed kids? Affirmative. Ages approximately 8 and 10, both male. She watched for another 30 seconds. Webb, that's not Taliban protocol. They don't bring children to combat operations. Could be using them as cover. She was quiet. Marcus could see her mind working, processing, calculating probabilities. Or intel's wrong. Marcus keyed the radio. Master Chief Kowalski's voice came back scratchy with distance. Alpha 1, what's your status? We have visual on convoy, 1 possible HVT, but he's traveling with 2 children. Request guidance. There was a long pause. Somewhere in a tactical operations center, officers were making decisions that would ripple out in ways they'd never see. Stand by. They waited. The convoy continued through the valley below. Marcus watched the man in the vehicle too. Watched him put his hand on one boy's shoulder. Watched them talk. Watched something that looked a lot like a family. The radio crackled again. Alpha 1, maintain observation. Do not engage unless hostile action confirmed. Acknowledge. Copy. Maintain observation only. The convoy passed through the valley and disappeared around a bend in the road. Sarah kept her scope on them until they were gone. That wasn't Zulfikar. How do you know? Body language. Zulfikar's intel profile says he walks with a pronounced limp. Soviet-era leg wound from the 80s. That man walked normally. And Zulfikar doesn't have children. His family was killed in a drone strike in 2007. Marcus felt cold water move through his veins. You sure? 90%. And if you're wrong, then a Taliban commander moves weapons and personnel, and more Americans die. They sat in silence as the sun moved across the sky. Below them, smoke from cooking fires began to rise from the compound. Life continued. People who didn't know they were being watched, didn't know that decisions about their existence were being made by strangers with rifles 800 meters away. As darkness fell, they switched to thermal optics. The world became shades of white and gray. Heat signatures blooming like flowers. Sarah glassed the compound methodically. Marcus watched her work. There was something almost meditative about it. The patience, the focus, the absolute commitment to seeing what was actually there rather than what you expected to see. At 2200 hours, the temperature dropped to 19 degrees. Wind picked up from the west. Marcus checked the weather meter. Barometric pressure falling fast. Storm coming. Chief, we got weather moving in. Sandstorm probable. How long? 30 minutes, maybe less. Copy. All stations, prepare for degraded visibility. Secure all gear. If conditions become 0 VIs, we hunker down until it passes. Sarah began lashing down equipment, tying off loose straps, covering optics, preparing for a storm that could last hours or days. Marcus did the same. They worked in synchronized silence. 2 people who'd learned to communicate without words. The storm hit at 22:30 like a physical force. Wind screamed across the ridgeline at 45 miles per hour. Sand filled the air, turning the world into a brown void. Visibility dropped to 3 feet. Marcus pulled his shemagh over his face and pressed himself flat against the rocks. Somewhere in the darkness, someone was shouting. Radio chatter broken by static. Then the distinct sound of automatic weapons fire. AK-47s, lots of them, and the deeper thump of a PKM machine gun. Sarah keyed her radio. Alpha 1, we're taking fire from the east. Say again, taking fire from East Ridge. The radio hissed with interference. Ray's voice came through broken. All stations, Contact east. Multiple hostiles, defensive positions, more gunfire. Closer now. Marcus couldn't see anything. Fighting in a sandstorm was like fighting underwater. Everything muffled. Everything distorted. Direction meaningless. Then Jimmy Brennan screamed. Not the scream of surprise. The scream of someone who'd been hit. Marcus crawled forward through the storm, following the sound. Found Jimmy 20 meters ahead, pressed against a boulder. Blood soaked through his left pant leg. Femoral artery. Not immediately fatal, but bad. Real bad. Ray appeared out of the storm with two other team members. Blood ran down the side of his face from a shrapnel wound. His eyes were wild. They knew exactly where we were. This was planned. They waited for the storm. How many? Don't know. Can't see a damn thing. But they got heavy weapons and they know our position. Where's the fire coming from? East Ridge, maybe 200 meters, maybe 500. In this, could be anywhere. Sarah materialized next to them. She'd stripped her gear down to essentials. Rifle, pistol, ammunition, weather meter. Nothing else. I need to move. I can find them. Marcus grabbed her arm. You'll die out there. She looked at him. In the dim light, her eyes were completely calm. We'll all die if I don't. Ray studied her face. How sure are you? That I can find them? 70%. That I can stop them? 50-50. Those are shitty odds. They're better than staying here. Ray looked at Marcus. A lifetime of combat decisions compressed into that single glance. Trust or don't. Live or die. Sometimes there were no good choices. Sometimes there were only less bad ones. Go. But Webb goes with you. Sarah started to protest. Ray cut her off. Non-negotiable. You're good, but everyone needs backup. Marcus grabbed his rifle and stripped his own gear. They moved into the storm together. Moving through a sandstorm in zero visibility required a kind of faith that Marcus had lost somewhere around his third deployment. But Sarah moved like she could see through the chaos. She navigated by feel, by the slope of the terrain, by the direction of the wind on her face. Every 50 meters she'd stop, orient, confirm their position against mental map. They'd covered maybe 80 meters when they heard voices. Pashto. Close. Too close. Marcus froze. Sarah put her hand on his shoulder. Wait. The voices moved past them. 10 meters away. Maybe less. The enemy was as blind as they were. Hunting by sound. Hoping to stumble across the Americans before the Americans stumbled across them. Sarah waited until the voices faded, then continued. They found the rocky outcrop exactly where she'd predicted. Higher ground. 60 meters of elevation advantage. She dropped prone and pulled out her rifle. Through the thermal sight, even degraded by the storm, Marcus could see heat signatures. 4 distinct sources. 3 clustered together, 1 separate. PKM team, Sarah whispered. 3 operators, range approximately 420 meters. She made calculations in her head. Wind speed, temperature, elevation. The thousands of variables that turn shooting into science and science into art. Marcus set up the spotting scope. Even with thermal, he could barely make out the targets. They were ghosts in the storm, shapes more than people. You can't make this shot, not in these conditions. Watch me. She controlled her breathing. 6 breaths per minute, heartbeat slowing, the world narrowing to a single point of focus. She fired. The rifle bucked. The sound was swallowed by wind. Marcus watched through the spotter, saw 1 heat signature drop. Hit! Target down! Sarah chambered another round, found the second target, fired, another hit. 2 down, the remaining signatures scattered. Smart. They knew a sniper was working, but they couldn't see her. Couldn't hear the shots over the storm. She was a phantom. Death from nowhere. 3rd shot, 4th shot, each one precise, each one final. When the firing stopped, 4 bodies lay on the East Ridge. Sarah lowered her rifle. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from cold, from adrenaline, from the weight of what she'd just done. Marcus keyed the radio. Alpha 1, targets neutralized. East Ridge is clear. Ray's voice came back stronger. The storm was beginning to ease. Say again? 4 hostiles eliminated. We're moving back to your position. How many shots? 4. There was a long pause. Jesus Christ, McKenna. They crawled back through the dissipating storm. By the time they reached the team's position, the wind had dropped to 20 miles per hour. Visibility had improved to 50 meters. Enough to see, enough to confirm. A patrol went forward to verify the kills. Tyler Cross led it. He came back 30 minutes later, face pale. 4 confirmed KIA. All headshots or upper chest range between 350 and 520 meters. In those conditions, he looked at Sarah like he was seeing her for the first time. I don't know how you did that. Math, she said. And luck. That wasn't luck. Some of it was. Jimmy Brennan had been evacuated by helicopter once the storm cleared enough. The femoral wound wasn't as bad as it looked. Tourniquet had controlled the bleeding. He'd live. Maybe keep his leg. Maybe not. But he'd live. Before they loaded him onto the bird, he grabbed Sarah's hand. You saved my life. I did my job. No, you saved my life. Thank you. She didn't know how to respond to that. Didn't know how to tell him that saving his life meant taking 4 others. That the math didn't balance, that it never would. She just nodded. The helicopter lifted off, rotors beating the cold air, carrying Jimmy Brennan away from the war. For now. Some men got to leave, some didn't. Marcus had stopped trying to figure out which category he fell into. Ray found them on the ridgeline as the sun began to rise. He looked older than he had 24 hours ago. Harder. Combat did that. Each firefight aged you in ways that had nothing to do with time. We're pulling back to the FOB. Missions changed. Intel wants us to stay in position, but I'm overruling. We need to regroup, resupply, figure out what the hell just happened. Marcus looked at Sarah. She was cleaning her rifle with the methodical precision of someone performing a religious ritual. Each part disassembled, inspected, cleaned, reassembled. The work of staying alive. You think they'll come back? Ray shook his head. No, they got hit hard. 4 dead. No American casualties except Jimmy. They'll pull back, regroup, plan something else. Unless they already planned something else. Ray looked at him. What do you mean? Marcus chose his words carefully. They knew exactly where we were. Waited for the storm. That takes coordination, intelligence. Someone told them we were here. You think we got a leak? I think it's possible. Ray was quiet for a long moment. If you're right, that changes everything. Yeah, it does. They extracted at 0800 hours on December 25th. Christmas morning, somewhere back in the world, families were opening presents, drinking coffee, laughing. Marcus tried to remember what that felt like and couldn't. The flight back to Phoebe Lightning took 45 minutes. Sarah sat across from him in the helicopter, eyes closed, hands folded in her lap. She could have been sleeping, could have been praying, could have been somewhere else entirely. When they touched down, Lieutenant Colonel Sandra Hendricks was waiting. She was 45 years old, had been in the Army for 23 years, and had the kind of presence that made junior officers stand straighter. She pulled Marcus and Sarah aside immediately. I need a full debrief. What happened out there? They told her. The convoy, the children, the storm, the ambush, the 4 kills. Everything except Marcus's suspicion about a leak that he'd saved for Ray to handle through proper channels. Hendricks listened without interrupting. When they finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Staff Sergeant McKenna, do you stand by your assessment that the convoy target was not Zulfikar? Yes, ma'am. Based on what evidence? Body language, gait analysis, the presence of children, behavioral patterns inconsistent with target profile. That's not hard intelligence. No, ma'am, it's not, but it's accurate. Hendricks turned to Marcus. Sergeant Webb, you were on the spotter scope. Did you confirm Staff Sergeant McKenna's assessment? I confirmed the presence of 2 children. I confirmed the target's gait was inconsistent with intel profile. I cannot confirm identity either way. Hendricks pulled out a tablet, swiped through several files. ISR drone was repositioned after your report. Got better angles. Facial recognition ran the convoy passengers. She turned the tablet around. The man you identified was Hamid Karim, village elder. Taliban affiliate, but not an active combatant. He was traveling with his 2 sons, ages 9 and 11. Sarah's face remained expressionless, but Marcus saw her hands tighten slightly. Relief, vindication, the knowledge that her instinct had been right. What about the 4 hostiles on East Ridge, Marcus asked. Confirmed Taliban, weapons, combat gear. You're clear on those. Hendricks closed the tablet. I'm putting this in my report. You made the right call not engaging the convoy. That would have been a significant diplomatic incident. Ray appeared behind them. Colonel, I need to speak with you, privately, about operational security. Hendricks looked at him, understood immediately. My office. Now. They walked away. Marcus and Sarah stood in the morning sun. Around them, the base was coming to life. Soldiers moving to breakfast. Generators humming. The mundane machinery of war grinding forward. Sarah spoke first. I need to call my brother. You got time. We're off mission rotation for 48 hours minimum. She nodded, started to walk away, then stopped. Webb, thank you for backing me up out there. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. You were right. Being right matters. Does it? Being right doesn't bring those 4 men back. No, but being wrong would have killed 2 kids and their father. The math's pretty clear. She looked at him. Something in her expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but close. Math? Yeah, that's all it is. She walked away. Marcus watched her go. Thought about the 47 unsent letters. Thought about Rachel's voice getting thinner with each call. Thought about Tyler asking when Daddy was coming home. He thought about a woman barely 5 feet tall who'd killed 4 men in a sandstorm to save her team. Who'd made the right call based on instinct when intelligence was wrong. Who carried the weight of those deaths with the same quiet professionalism she brought to everything else. Maybe the math wasn't so simple after all. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Again. He found Ray on the perimeter smoking another contraband cigarette, staring at the mountains. You tell Hendricks about the leak? Yeah. What did she say? She's investigating. Quietly, if there is someone passing information, we can't spook them. You think it's one of ours? Ray took a long drag. I hope not, but hope's not a strategy. They stood in silence. Somewhere in the darkness, someone was playing a guitar. Badly. The sound drifted across the bass like a memory of a life that used to exist. Ray pulled out his father's dog tags, turned them over in his hand. My old man died in Mogadishu. Battle of the Black Sea. October 1993. He was part of Task Force Ranger, the mission that became Black Hawk Down. Never knew I existed. My mom was pregnant when he deployed. Sometimes I wonder what he'd think of all this. If it was worth it? Was what worth it? The sacrifice. His death. My career. Your 4 deployments. McKenna killing 4 men in a sandstorm. All of it. Marcus didn't have an answer. Wasn't sure there was one. Ray pocketed the dog tags. She's good, Webb. McKenna. Best I've seen in a long time. Yeah, she is. But she's carrying something heavy. I can see it. We all are. Ray nodded. Yeah, but some weights are heavier than others. 2 days later, Sarah made her call home. Marcus didn't mean to overhear. He'd been walking past the communications tent when her voice drifted through the canvas walls. Hey, Ethan? Yeah, I'm okay. No, I can't talk about the mission. You know that. A pause. Your wedding? When is it? Another pause. Longer. March 15th. Yeah, I'll try to be there. I don't know if I can get leave. The deployment schedule's complicated. Her voice got quieter. Ethan, I'm happy for you. I really am. Rachel sounds great. I'm sure it'll be beautiful. Silence. I know I missed your graduation. And your promotion ceremony. I'm sorry. This job doesn't leave room for much else. More silence. Yeah, I love you too. Give Rachel my congratulations. I'll call when I can. Marcus heard the phone click off. Heard Sarah take a breath that sounded like she was trying not to cry. He walked away quietly. Some moments weren't meant to be witnessed. That night, he wrote his 48th letter to Rachel. Dear Rachel, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it home. I need you to know something. I met someone out here who reminded me why this matters. Not the politics, not the mission, the people. We do this job because someone has to. Because if we don't, more Jimmy Brennans bleed out in sandstorms. More villages get destroyed by wrong intelligence. More families lose fathers. I know I've been gone too long. I know Tyler barely remembers me. I know you're tired of waiting. I don't blame you. But I need you to understand. When I come home this time, I'm done. No more deployments. No more letters you might have to read. I choose you. I choose Tyler. I choose the life we were supposed to have. I love you. I'm sorry it took me 4 deployments to remember that. He folded the letter, put it with the other 47. Tomorrow, Intel was briefing them on a new mission. Something about Zulfikar moving toward the Pakistan border. Something about a narrow window of opportunity. Something that sounded like it was going to go sideways fast. But tonight, Marcus Webb sat in the darkness of Forward Operating Base Lightning and let himself imagine a different kind of future. One where he taught Tyler to ride a bike. Where he and Rachel grew old together. Where the weight of war finally lifted. The mountains were silent. The stars burned cold and distant. And somewhere in the darkness, a woman named Sarah McKenna cleaned her rifle one more time, preparing for whatever came next. Because that's what soldiers do. They prepare. They endure. They carry weights that would break most people. And they keep moving forward, even when they don't know why. The briefing room at 0700 hours on December 27th smelled like burnt coffee and the particular kind of tension that comes before bad news. Marcus Webb sat in the back row watching Colonel Bruce Hardwick set up the projector with the careful movements of a man who'd never had to set up his own equipment before. Officers like Hardwick had people for that, but this briefing was classified enough that even the usual support staff had been excluded. Sarah McKenna sat 2 seats away, perfectly still. She'd been perfectly still for 40 minutes. Marcus had learned to read her stillness the way some men read water or wind. This wasn't the calm of meditation. This was the frozen alertness of prey sensing a predator. Ray Kowalski stood against the wall, arms crossed. His face had the hard set that Marcus recognized from Taker Gar, from the moments before everything went to hell. Ray's instincts were rarely wrong. If he looked worried, there was something to worry about. The projector finally flickered to life. A satellite image filled the screen. Mountains. A compound. Grid coordinates that put it 20 kilometers north of their current position, close enough to the Pakistan border that you could probably throw a rock across it if you had a good arm. Hardwick's voice had that rehearsed quality that came from practicing in front of a mirror. Intelligence has confirmed that Zulfikar is currently located at this compound. He's preparing to move across the border within the next 48 hours. Once he crosses into Pakistan, he's beyond our operational reach. Lieutenant Nathan Cross raised his hand. The kid still believed in proper military protocol. Afghanistan would beat that out of him eventually. Sir, what's the confidence level on this intelligence? Hardwick's jaw tightened the way it had during the last briefing. High confidence, multiple sources, signals intelligence, human intelligence, pattern of life analysis. This is solid. Marcus felt Sarah shift beside him. Not a big movement, just a slight adjustment of weight. But he'd learned to read those small movements too. She had questions. She wasn't asking them. Not yet. The mission brief continued. Observation and reporting had been upgraded to direct action. Capture or kill authorization. High-value target elimination. The language of war dressed up in bureaucratic sterility. Ray spoke from his position against the wall. Sir, what's the threat assessment at the compound? How many hostiles are we looking at? Hardwick clicked to the next slide. Thermal imagery. Heat signatures clustered around structures. Best estimate is 12 to 15 military-age males. Armed, alert. They know we're in the area after the engagement 2 days ago. So they're expecting us. They're expecting something. But they don't know when or how we're coming. Respectfully, sir, that's an assumption. Hardwick's face went red. He didn't like being questioned, especially not by enlisted men, especially not in front of junior officers. Master Chief, I've been doing this for 26 years. I understand tactical assessment. Yes, sir. So have I. And in my experience, assumptions get people killed. The room went quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. Officers didn't talk to colonels that way. Not in briefing rooms. Not anywhere. But Ray Kowalski had 3 decades of combat experience and zero interest in politics. He'd carried dead friends off mountains. He'd earned the right to speak truth. Hardwick took a breath, composed himself. Noted. Is there anything else? Sarah's voice cut through the tension like a blade. The previous target identification was incorrect. What verification do we have that this is actually Zulfikar? Every head in the room turned to look at her. She met Hardwick's gaze without flinching. Staff Sergeant McKenna, the previous identification was based on limited visual confirmation in suboptimal conditions. This intelligence is comprehensive. Multiple verification streams. This is Zulfikar. Can I see the facial recognition analysis? That's classified above your clearance level. Then how am I supposed to confirm target identification when I have him in my scope? Hardwick's face was now the color of a fresh bruise. You will follow your orders, Staff Sergeant. When I give you clearance to engage, you will engage. Is that understood? Sarah didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched out. Marcus could see the calculation happening behind her eyes, the weighing of options, the decision tree branching out into 1,000 possible futures. Understood, sir. But Marcus heard what she didn't say. Heard the reservation, the doubt, the knowledge that following orders and doing the right thing weren't always the same. The briefing continued for another 40 minutes. Insertion points, extraction plans, rules of engagement, communication protocols. The machinery of military planning, grinding through details that would probably change the moment they made contact. Afterward, Ray pulled Marcus and Sarah aside, away from the others, into a small office that smelled like diesel fuel and old paper. He closed the door, locked it. I need you two to do something. Off the books. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Sir, Ray pulled out a map. Spread it across the desk. I don't trust this intel. Too clean, too convenient. Hardwick's pushing this operation hard. Too hard. Something's wrong. What do you need? Advanced reconnaissance. Tonight. Get closer to the compound. Verify the thermal signatures. Confirm what we're actually dealing with before we commit to a full assault. That's not in the mission brief. No, it's not. Which is why this conversation never happened. You go on your own. If you get caught, I'll deny I sent you. You'll face disciplinary action. But if you find something that saves lives, it'll be worth it. Sarah spoke for the first time since leaving the briefing room. Why us? Because you're the only two I trust to make the right call. To see what's actually there instead of what the intel says is there. And if the intel's right, if it is Zulfikar, then we execute the mission as planned. But if it's not, if there are civilians, if there are kids, I need to know before we put the team at risk. Marcus looked at Sarah. She nodded slightly. What time do we leave? 2300 hours. Meet me at the north perimeter. I'll sign you out for security patrol. Cover story. If anyone asks, you're checking for breach points in the wire. Roger that. Ray looked at them both. This is important. I am asking you to risk your careers, maybe your lives. But I can't send 12 men into a situation that might be based on bad intelligence. Not again. We understand, Chief. Good. Now get out of here before someone notices we're having a private conversation. The movement began at 2300 hours under a moon that was 3 days from full, bright enough to navigate without night vision, bright enough to be seen if you weren't careful. Marcus and Sarah moved through the wire at the north perimeter, past sentries who'd been told to expect them, who waved them through without questions. They covered the first 3 kilometers in silence. The terrain was rocky, unforgiving. Every step had to be calculated. A turned ankle out here could mean death, not from the fall, from being immobile when the enemy found you. Sarah moved like she'd been born in these mountains. Smooth, efficient, zero wasted energy. Marcus followed, matching her pace, maintaining interval. They'd fallen into an unspoken rhythm over the past few days, the kind of synchronization that usually took months to develop. At the 4-kilometer mark, they stopped. Sarah pulled out her rangefinder, painted the compound with an invisible laser. The device beeped softly, 2,800 meters, closer than they'd been during the previous observation, close enough to see details that satellite imagery couldn't capture. She set up her spotting scope. Marcus pulled security, scanning their 6 with night vision. The valley was empty, for now, but empty didn't mean safe. Empty just meant you couldn't see the threat yet. Sarah spent 20 minutes glassing the compound. Marcus watched her work, watched the small movements of her hands adjusting focus, watched her breathing slow into that meditative state that good snipers could reach, the place where observation became something almost spiritual. Finally, she lowered the scope. 3 children, ages approximately 6 to 12, 2 adult females, non-combatant posture and movement, plus 11 military-age males, armed, alert. So it's a family compound. Or hostages. You think Zulfikar would use hostages? I think desperate men do desperate things. Marcus keyed his radio, low power, encrypted, hoping the signal would reach back to the fob without being intercepted. Alpha 1, this is Sierra 2, how copy? Static. Then Ray's voice, rough with sleep. This is Alpha 1, go ahead. We're in position. Have eyes on target compound. Confirm 3 juvenile heat signatures, 2 adult female signatures, mixed with 11 military-age males. The pause was longer this time. Copy that, stand by. They waited. The minutes stretched out. Marcus watched the compound through his night vision, saw movement, shadows crossing behind the lit windows, people living lives that would probably end violently in the next 48 hours. Ray came back on. Sierra 2, new orders. Continue observation until 0600. Document everything you see. I'm briefing Colonel Hardwick at 0700 with your intelligence. This could change the mission parameters. Copy that. Continuing observation. Marcus looked at Sarah. So we're not in trouble. Apparently Ray cleared it. Smart, he sent us but made it look like our initiative. That way, if Hardwick pushes back, Ray can either support us or throw us under, depending on what's political. That's some strategic thinking. That's 3 decades of surviving military politics. They remained in position until dawn, watching, documenting, confirming the presence of non-combatants, building the case that would either change the mission or put them in front of a disciplinary board. At 0600, they began the movement back to Phobe lightning. The sun was rising, the the temperature climbing, the night's concealment burned away by daylight. When they reached the perimeter, Ray was waiting. Debrief. Now. They followed him to his office. He closed the door, sat down heavily. Tell me everything. They did. 3 children, 2 women, body language, movement patterns, the mixing of families with fighters, the complexity of a target that wasn't clean, that would never be clean. Ray listened, took notes, asked clarifying questions. When they finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I'm briefing Hardwick in 1 hour. This is going to go one of 2 ways. Either he adjusts the mission to account for non-combatants, or he pushes forward anyway and tells us to minimize civilian casualties. And if it's the second, then we do our jobs. We follow orders. We try to save who we can, and we live with the consequences. Marcus felt the weight of that statement. The knowledge that sometimes doing your job meant doing terrible things, that orders didn't absolve you, that you carried the weight regardless. There's one more thing you should know. What's that, Chief? I think we have a leak. Someone's been passing information to Taliban intel. It's how they knew our position during the sandstorm. It's probably how they'll know about this operation. Who? I don't know yet, but Major Kim is investigating. Quietly. If we have a traitor, we need to find them before they get more people killed. Sarah spoke. Does Hardwick know? Not yet. I'm telling him this morning, along with your recon findings. How do you think he'll react? Ray's face was hard. I think he'll try to bury it, because a leak in his command looks bad, reflects on his leadership. He's up for promotion to brigadier general. He doesn't want anything that makes him look incompetent. So he'll sacrifice operational security for his career. Welcome to the military. After Ray dismissed them, Marcus and Sarah walked to the mess hall, grabbed coffee, sat in silence. The weight of what was coming pressing down like gravity. Sarah spoke first. I can't do it. Can't do what? Lead that raid. Put my team at risk to kill people who might not even be the right targets. You don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Not in the military, there isn't. She turned to face him. Her eyes were hard, angry, the first real emotion he'd seen her show. My father used to say that following orders is easy. Doing right is hard, and sometimes they're not the same thing. Your father was a rancher, not a soldier. Maybe that's why he understood better than we do. Marcus didn't have an answer for that. They finished their coffee in silence. The briefing at 0700 was tense. Hardwick listened to Ray's report with a face carved from stone. Listened to the intelligence about non-combatants. Listened to the suspicion about a leak. When Ray finished, the silence stretched out for a full minute. Then Hardwick spoke. Your concerns are noted, Master Chief. However, the mission will proceed as planned. We have positive intelligence that Zulfikar is at that compound. The presence of civilians is unfortunate, but we will take all necessary precautions to minimize collateral damage. Sir, with respect, if we know there are children present, we should reconsider direct action. Perhaps call in an airstrike after confirming civilian evacuation. Negative. Airstrikes take time we don't have. Zulfikar will be across the border by tonight if we don't act. The mission is go. And the leak, sir? I'm aware of Major Kim's investigation. If there is a security breach, it will be dealt with. But that doesn't change our operational timeline. Understood, sir. Ray's voice was flat, empty. The voice of a man who'd just been told to do something he knew was wrong, but had no power to stop. The team deployed at 2100 hours that night. 2 Chinooks, fast rope descent 1 kilometer from the target compound. The moon was bright. The temperature had dropped to 32 degrees. Perfect conditions for an operation that felt wrong from the start. Sarah and Marcus established overwatch at grid position 41R PR 91452, 800 meters from the compound. Elevated position, clear sight lines. Their job was to provide reconnaissance and precision fire support, to eliminate threats that endangered the assault team, to make the hard calls that men on the ground couldn't make. The setup took 30 minutes. Sarah methodical as always. Marcus watching her hands. Steady now, professional. The doubt buried under layers of training and discipline. Ray's voice came through the radio. All stations, this is Alpha 1. Stand by for final clearance from Tok. They waited. Marcus watched the compound through thermal imagery, counted heat signatures. 11 adult males, 3 smaller signatures. 2 medium signatures, exactly what they'd seen during the unauthorized recon. The radio crackled, but it wasn't Ray, it was Colonel Hardwick. Alpha 1, this is Overwatch 6. You are cleared hot. I say again, cleared hot for direct action. Rules of engagement are capture if possible, kill if necessary. All military-age males are considered hostile. Engage at will. There was a pause, then Ray's voice. Understood, Overwatch 6. Alpha 1 is moving to assault positions. Marcus saw Sarah's hands tighten on her rifle. Here we go. The assault team moved forward. Marcus tracked them through the spotter, saw them split into two elements, saw them approach the compound walls, saw the lead breacher place charges on the main gate. Everything was going according to plan, which meant something was about to go very wrong. The explosion lit up the night. The gate blew inward. The assault team poured through. Marcus could hear the muffled sounds of gunfire, shouting, the chaos of close-quarters combat. Then Sarah's voice, calm, professional, deadly. I have movement. East wall, two military-age males, armed AK-47s. They're moving to flank the assault team. Range? 740 meters. Clear to engage? She hesitated, just for a second. But in that second, Marcus saw her calculate 1,000 variables. Saw her weigh the consequences. Saw her make the choice. Engaging. The rifle barked. Once. Twice. Marcus watched through the spotter. Both targets dropped. Targets neutralized. Ray's voice came through, strained with combat. Good hits, Sierra 1. We're taking fire from inside the compound. Multiple shooters. Can you identify? Sarah was already scanning, her scope sweeping across windows, doors, blind spots. Negative. Too much interference. Thermals picking up too many signatures. I can't distinguish combatant from non-combatant. Then hold fire unless you have a clear shot at a definite threat. Copy. Holding. The firefight continued for another 3 minutes. Then the radio traffic changed, became urgent, panicked in the way that professional soldiers almost never sound panicked. Alpha 1, this is Alpha 3. We have civilians, multiple civilians, women and children. They're in the main room with the hostiles. Ray's response was immediate. Cease fire, cease fire, all elements hold position. Do not engage unless you have positive identification of hostile intent. But the Taliban fighters weren't holding fire. They were using the civilians as shields. Smart, brutal, effective. Marcus watched Sarah, saw her tracking movement through her scope, saw the calculation happening, the impossible math of warfare where every decision had a cost. Her voice was barely a whisper. I have a shot. Window, second floor, male, armed, RPG. If he fires, the assault team is gone. How sure are you? 90%. That's not good enough. I know. What's the other 10%? Could be a kid. The thermal signature's ambiguous. Heat pattern suggests adult. Body language suggests adult. But the size is small, could be adolescent, could be juvenile holding an adult's weapon. Marcus felt his heart hammering. This was the moment, the choice that would define everything that came after. Your call, Sarah. She was silent. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds that felt like hours. Then movement. The figure shifted, brought the RPG to shoulder. And in that movement, Sarah saw something. Some detail that clarified. Some information that resolved the ambiguity. She fired. The figure dropped. Ray's voice. What was that? Who's shooting? Sierra 1. Eliminated RPG threat. Second floor west window. Confirmed threat? Confirmed. Adult male. Weapon positive. Hostile intent confirmed. The assault team moved again. Cleared the compound room by room. It took another 10 minutes. 10 minutes that felt like 10 years. Finally, Ray's voice. Compound secure. 10 EKIA. 3 women secured. 3 children secured. No U.S. casualties. Marcus felt relief flood through him. No American dead. Civilians alive. Mission success. But Sarah didn't lower her rifle. She kept scanning, kept watching. What is it? She was quiet for a moment. Zulfikar's not here. What? None of the EKIA match his description. None of them have the leg injury. This was a Taliban cell, but it wasn't Zulfikar. The radio crackled. Ray's voice was different now, harder. TOC, this is Alpha 1. We have secured the objective. 10 EKG. Multiple civilians secured, but primary target is not present. I say again, Zulfikar is not present. Hardwick's response was ice. Confirm that report, Alpha 1. Affirmative. Primary target not present at objective. There was a long silence. Then proceed with SSE and prepare for extraction. We'll debrief at the TOC. The long walk back to the landing zone was done in silence. The assault team carried the weight of another mission where intelligence hadn't matched reality, where they'd risked their lives for a target that wasn't there. Sarah and Marcus walked together. She hadn't spoken since confirming Zulfikar's absence. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. You made the right shots. Did I? 10 men are dead, and the one we were actually after is still out there. Those 10 men would have killed our team. You saved lives by taking them. That's what we do. She stopped walking, turned to look at him. How do you keep doing this, Webb? How do you keep making these calls and then living with them? Marcus thought about Tucker Gar, thought about the 48 unsent letters, thought about all the choices that had led him to this moment in this valley, in this war that never seemed to end. I don't know. I just do. Because the alternative is letting someone else make the calls, and they might make worse ones. That's not much of an answer. It's the only one I have. They continued walking. Above them, stars wheeled across the sky. Indifferent. Eternal. The same stars that had watched Alexander the Great march through these valleys. The same stars that had seen the Soviets retreat. The same stars that would watch long after America was gone. Back at FO Lightning, the debriefing was brutal. Hardwick was furious. The mission had been a tactical success but a strategic failure. They'd killed Taliban fighters but missed the primary target. The civilians complicated the narrative, made it harder to call this a clean win. Sarah and Marcus sat in the back of the briefing room, listened to Hardwick spin the operation into something that sounded better than it was. Listened to him take credit for the civilian rescue while glossing over the failed intelligence. Ray caught Marcus's eye, gave him a slight nod. We tried. We did what we could. Sometimes that has to be enough. After the debrief, Marcus found himself alone in his quarters. 200 hours. Couldn't sleep. Again. He pulled out his letters, all 48 of them, started to write number 49. Dear Rachel, tonight we raided a compound looking for a man who wasn't there. We killed 10 people. We saved 6. The math doesn't balance. It never does. I'm starting to understand that it never will. I don't know if that makes me better at this job or worse at being human. He stopped writing, realized he was crying. First time in 3 years. The tears felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else. There was a knock on his door. Sarah stood outside. Her eyes were red. Can't sleep either? No. They sat together on the steps outside his quarters. Didn't talk. Just sat in the darkness and carried their weights together. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes the only thing you could do was witness someone else's burden and let them witness yours. After a long time, Sarah spoke. My brother called yesterday. He's getting married. Wants me at the wedding. I told him I can't make it. Why not? Because I can't stand in front of happy people and pretend I'm not broken. You're not broken. Then why does it feel like I am? Marcus didn't have an answer. He was still trying to figure that out himself. They sat until the sun began to rise. Watched the light paint the mountains gold and copper. Another day, another mission, another chance to get it right or get it wrong. Ray found them as the base came to life. Got new intel. Real Zulfikar spotted 12 clicks north, moving toward Pakistan border. We have maybe 6 hours before he crosses. Sarah looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Sarah. They were exhausted. They were done. They wanted to go home. But there was still a mission, still a target, still a war that didn't care if you were tired. When do we leave? Sarah asked. 1 hour. Get your gear. They stood, began walking to the armory. Behind them, the sun continued to rise. Beautiful and terrible. The kind of morning that made you remember why you joined up in the first place. The kind of morning that made you forget why you wanted to leave. Marcus stopped, looked at Sarah. After this one, I'm done. 4 deployments is enough. I'm going home. Good. You should. What about you? She was quiet for a long moment. Ask me when it's over. They continued walking, the weight of the rifle, the weight of the mission, the weight of all the choices that had led them here and all the choices still to come. One more operation, one more target, one more chance to get it right. The mountains waited, patient, indifferent, eternal. And somewhere out there, a man named Zulfikar was moving toward the border, not knowing that 2 soldiers with rifles and complicated consciences were coming to find him. Not knowing that sometimes the weight of being right was heavier than the weight of being wrong. Not knowing that the hardest part of war wasn't the fighting. It was coming home afterward and trying to remember who you used to be. The helicopter lifted off at 0800 hours into a sky that promised nothing good. Marcus Webb sat across from Sarah McKenna in the troop compartment, watching her go through the same pre-mission ritual he'd seen 3 times before. Eyes closed, breathing controlled, hands resting on her rifle case. But this time something was different. This time her hands were shaking, just slightly, barely visible, But Marcus had learned to see the small things, the details that separated survival from death, and Sarah McKenna's hands never shook. The mission brief had been simple, almost insultingly simple. Zulfikar had been positively identified 12 kilometers north of their previous position. He was moving toward the Pakistan border with a small security element. 4 to 6 fighters. The window of opportunity was closing. 6 hours, maybe less. The plan was surgical. Alpha Team would establish an observation post 2 kilometers from Zulfikar's expected route. Sarah would take the shot if the opportunity presented itself. If not, they'd call in an airstrike and level whatever structure he was hiding in. Clean, efficient, no room for mistakes. Except Marcus knew there was always room for mistakes. War was nothing but mistakes dressed up as strategy. Ray Kowalski sat near the cockpit, talking to the pilots. His face had the hard set that meant he was expecting contact, expecting things to go wrong. Ray's instincts were rarely wrong. They'd kept him alive through 3 decades of war. They'd kept a lot of other people alive too. The Chinook banked hard left, dropping altitude fast. Marcus's stomach rose into his chest. Below them, the Hindu Kush Mountains stretched out like a relief map from a nightmare. All sharp edges and deep shadows, terrain that had been killing invaders for thousands of years. They touched down in a valley that smelled like snow and old death. The team moved out immediately. 12 operators, 1 mission. The math should have been simple, but math in Afghanistan never was. Sarah and Marcus split off from the main element after the first kilometer. They needed higher ground, better sight lines, the kind of position where you could see everything and be seen by nothing. The climb took 90 minutes, steep, rocky, the kind of terrain that tested every muscle you had and a few you didn't know existed. Sarah moved with that same efficient grace, but Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders, the weight she was carrying that had nothing to do with the 70 pounds of gear on her back. They reached the ridgeline at 0945. The observation point Ray had selected was perfect. 2,800 meters from the compound where intelligence said Zulfikar was preparing to move. Elevated by 380 meters, clear sight lines to 3 different approach routes. Sarah set up her rifle with the practiced movements of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. But her hands were still shaking, just slightly, just enough. Marcus established the spotting scope, ranged key terrain features, verified wind flags they'd placed during their unauthorized reconnaissance 2 nights ago. Everything was in position. Everything was ready. Except Sarah. "You okay?" She didn't answer immediately, just kept adjusting her scope, making micro-corrections that didn't need to be made. "Sarah." She finally looked at him. Her eyes were different, haunted in a way he hadn't seen before. "Last night I dreamed about the RPG shooter, the one I killed during the raid. In the dream, he was a kid, 14 years old, and I shot him anyway. But he wasn't a kid. You confirmed hostile intent, adult male, armed, threatening the team." "I know. So what's the problem?" "The problem is I'm starting to see them all as kids. Every target, every heat signature, every decision. I'm starting to hesitate, and hesitation gets people killed." Marcus understood. He'd been there. That moment when the certainty started to crack, when the clear lines between enemy and civilian began to blur. When you started questioning every decision you had ever made. You want to know what Ray told me after Takur Gar? After I carried Chapman's body 3 clicks and couldn't save him? "What?" He said the day you stop questioning yourself is the day you become dangerous. Not dangerous to the enemy, dangerous to everyone. That's supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to make you understand that doubt means you're still human, and we need you to be human because inhuman soldiers don't hesitate when they should. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded, went back to her rifle. The shaking in her hands had stopped. Ray's voice crackled through the radio. "All stations, this is Alpha 1. Target has begun movement. Convoy of 2 vehicles heading north en route Viper. ETA to your position is 20 minutes. Sarah keyed her mic. "Copy, Alpha 1, we're in position." "Good. Remember, this is capture or kill. If you can disable the vehicles without killing Zulfikar, that's preferred. But if you have the shot, you're cleared to take it." "Understood." Marcus pulled out his rangefinder, started painting targets along the route. 800 meters, 1,200 meters, 1,800 meters. Every possible position where Zulfikar might stop. Every angle Sarah might need. The convoy appeared at 1000 hours exactly. 2 Toyota Hilux trucks, technical vehicles with mounted machine guns, moving slowly, cautiously. Zulfikar knew the Americans were close, knew they were hunting him, but he didn't know how close. Didn't know that two soldiers with rifles were watching his every move from 2,800 meters away. Sarah tracked them through her scope. Marcus watched through the spotter. The first vehicle held 4 fighters, young men with AK-47s, in the kind of confidence that comes from never having been hit by American precision fire. The second vehicle held 3 more fighters, and 1 passenger in traditional dress, bearded, 50s, moving with the careful gait of someone compensating for an old injury. "That's him," Sarah said. Vehicle 2, rear passenger, matches the gait pattern, left leg injury, compensated movement. "That's Zulfikar." "Confirm." Marcus studied the figure through his scope, compared it to the intelligence photos. The beard was grayer, the face more weathered, but the posture matched, the injury matched, the age matched. "Confirmed, that's our target." "Range to vehicle?" 2,600 meters, moving away, range increasing. "Can you make the shot?" Sarah didn't answer immediately. She was running calculations. Wind speed, temperature, barometric pressure, the Coriolis effect, bullet drop, 1,000 variables that could turn a perfect shot into a miss. "Not while they're moving. I need them to stop." "How long?" "Need at least 8 seconds. 10 would be better. Stationary target, predictable position." Marcus keyed the radio. "Alpha 1, we have positive ID on primary target, but he's mobile. We need him to stop." Ray's response was immediate. "What do you need?" "A reason for them to halt. Checkpoint, obstacle, something that makes them pause." "Stand by." They watched the convoy continue north. Every second took Zulfikar farther from their position, farther from American reach, closer to the Pakistan border and safety. Ray came back on. "There's a Taliban checkpoint 2 clicks ahead. They have to stop there. Standard procedure. That's your window." "How long will they stop?" "Intel says average is 2 to 3 minutes. Identification check. Vehicle inspection." "That's not enough time for me to set up the shot." "Then you better be ready when they arrive." Sarah adjusted her position, checked her rifle, verified her dope. Everything had to be perfect. At this range, at this distance, there was no room for error. One shot, one chance. Miss and Zulfikar would disappear into Pakistan. Miss and another year of operations would end in failure. Miss and more Americans would die on roads rigged with his IEDs. The weight of that knowledge sat heavy in the mountain air between them. The convoy reached the checkpoint at 10:22. Both vehicles stopped. Fighters climbed out. Began the ritual of identification and inspection. Taliban checking Taliban, making sure everyone was who they claimed to be. Zulfikar remained in the vehicle, watching, waiting. A patient man who'd survived 4 decades of war by never being the first one to expose himself to danger. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Range 2,995 meters. Wind 8 miles per hour quartering from the left. Temperature 38 degrees. Pressure stable. I have the calculations." "Can you make it?" She was silent. Marcus waited, knew better than to push. This was her call, her shot, her burden to carry afterward. The effective range of the M110 is 800 meters. Maximum range is 1,200 if you're lucky and the conditions are perfect. I'm asking it to do 2.5 times that. So that's a no. That's a probably not. What are the odds? 50-50. Maybe 60-40 if I'm being optimistic. Those are shitty odds for a shot that matters this much. Yeah, they are. Marcus watched Zulfikar through the spotter, saw him shift in his seat, saw him say something to the driver. In 30 seconds, maybe 60, the checkpoint would clear. The convoy would continue. The window would close. "Your call, Sarah, but it has to be now." She took a breath, let it out slowly. Her heart rate dropped. Marcus could see it happening. Watched her slip into that place where good snipers lived. That space between thought and action, where instinct took over and the world narrowed to a single point of focus. "I'm taking the shot." She settled into position, adjusted her scope one final time. The crosshairs found Zulfikar's chest, center mass, the largest target, the most forgiving point of aim. But at 3,000 meters, center mass was a fantasy. At that distance, she was aiming at a figure the size of her thumbnail. One breath too many and she'd miss. One heartbeat at the wrong moment and the bullet would drift. One gust of wind and 3 years of operations would end in failure. She controlled her breathing. 6 breaths per minute, 4 breaths per minute. 2. The world disappeared. There was only the target, only the wind, only the mathematics of violence. "Send it," Marcus whispered. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle barked. The recoil drove into her shoulder. The sound echoed across the valley like thunder. And for 3.4 seconds, the bullet flew. 3.4 seconds is an eternity in combat. 3.4 seconds is enough time to doubt everything, to question every calculation, to wonder if you made a mistake that can never be undone. Marcus tracked the bullet through the spotter, watched it arc across the valley, saw it descend toward the checkpoint, toward the vehicle, toward a man who had no idea death was coming at 2,800 feet per second. Impact. The word came out flat, emotionless. But Marcus's hands were shaking now, because he just watched something impossible become real. Zulfikar's chest exploded. The bullet punched through the vehicle door like it was paper, punched through body armor like it was cloth, punched through bone and tissue and vital organs. The man who'd survived Soviet invasion and American occupation, the man who'd planned and executed hundreds of attacks, the man who'd killed American soldiers and Afghan civilians with equal indifference. He was dead before his body hit the ground. The checkpoint erupted in chaos. Fighters scattered, scrambling for cover from a threat they couldn't see, couldn't identify, couldn't fight. Sarah chambered another round, scanned for secondary targets, but the Taliban were running, breaking contact, abandoning their dead commander and fleeing into the mountains. Marcus keyed the radio. "Alpha 1, target down. Confirmed kill on primary target. Hostile forces retreating." Ray's voice came back tight with controlled emotion. "Say again, Sierra 1. Confirmed target status. Target eliminated. Single shot. Center mass. He's down and not getting up." There was a pause. Marcus could imagine Ray in the Tactical Operations Center. Could imagine the relief flooding through him. The knowledge that 3 years of operations had finally ended the way they were supposed to. "Outstanding. Drone confirmation coming in now. Stand by." They waited. Sarah didn't lower her rifle. Just kept scanning. Kept watching. The professional never stops working until the mission is complete. 30 seconds later, Ray came back. "Drone confirms kill. Facial recognition, positive. That's Zulfikar. Mission success. Prepare for extraction." "Copy. Moving to extraction point." Sarah finally lowered her rifle. Her hands were shaking again. But this time Marcus understood why. This time it wasn't doubt, it was the aftermath. The crash that came when adrenaline stopped and reality started. When you realized what you'd just done and could never undo. Marcus put his hand on her shoulder. "That was the best shot I've ever seen. In 20 years, in 4 deployments, in every engagement I've witnessed, that was perfection." She didn't respond, just started breaking down her rifle, slow, mechanical, going through the motions because motion was all that kept you from thinking too much. They began the movement to the extraction point, 2 kilometers, downhill, should have taken 30 minutes. But Sarah moved slowly, like she was carrying weight that Marcus couldn't see. Halfway down, she stopped, sat down on a rock, stared at the valley below. "Webb, can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "How many people have you killed?" The question hung in the mountain air. Marcus thought about Takragar, thought about 3 other deployments, thought about firefights and close quarters combat and all the moments when it came down to you or them and you chose you. "I don't know. I stopped counting after 20. "Do you remember them?" "Some of them. The first one. A few others. Most of them are just shadows now." "Does it get easier?" "No, but you get better at carrying it." She nodded, stood up, continued walking. They reached the extraction point at 11:15. The rest of Alpha Team was already there. Jimmy Brennan approached Sarah with that eager energy that marked him as someone who hadn't quite grasped the cost of what they did. "Is it true? Did you really make a 3,000-meter shot?" Sarah didn't answer, just walked past him, found a spot away from the others, sat down alone. Jimmy looked at Marcus, confused. "Did I say something wrong?" "No, you just don't understand yet." "Understand what?" "That being the best at killing people isn't something to celebrate." The helicopter arrived 20 minutes later. They loaded up, headed back to Afab Lightning. The flight was quiet, none of the usual banter that followed successful missions. No jokes, no relief, just exhausted men processing what they'd done and what it meant. Sarah sat with her eyes closed. Marcus wondered if she was sleeping or just pretending to sleep so nobody would talk to her. He understood that need. The need to be alone with what you'd done before you had to explain it to people who'd never understand. Back at the FOB, Colonel Hardwick was waiting. He'd traded his desert camouflage for a fresh uniform. Looked like he was about to hold a press conference. Probably was. A successful high-value target kill made good headlines, made good promotion material. He shook Ray's hand first, then turned to Sarah. Staff Sergeant McKenna, extraordinary shooting. I'm told the shot was just under 3,000 meters, in combat conditions. That's remarkable. Thank you, sir. I'm recommending you for the Bronze Star, maybe the Silver Star. This is the kind of operation that deserves recognition. Sarah's face remained expressionless. With respect, sir, I'd prefer you didn't. Hardwick blinked, like she'd just spoken in a foreign language. I'm sorry? I don't want to meddle. I did my job, that's all. Staff Sergeant, this is beyond your job. This is exceptional performance under extraordinary circumstances. You deserve recognition. What I deserve, sir, is to not have my face on recruiting posters, to not become a story that makes this look easy. Because it wasn't easy, and it cost me something I can't get back. The area went quiet. You didn't talk to colonels that way, not if you wanted to keep your career. But Sarah wasn't talking like someone who cared about her career anymore. Hardwick's face went red. We'll discuss this later, when you've had time to decompress. There's nothing to discuss, sir. I did what you ordered. I killed Zulfikar. Mission accomplished. But I won't celebrate it. She walked away, left Hardwick standing there looking like he'd been slapped. Ray caught Marcus's eye, gave him a slight nod. Go after her. Marcus found Sarah behind the supply depot. She was sitting against a concrete barrier, rifle across her lap, staring at nothing. He sat down next to her, didn't speak, just sat. Sometimes that was all you could do. Witness someone else's burden and let them know they weren't carrying it alone. After a long time, Sarah spoke. You know what the worst part is? It's not that I killed him. He needed killing. He was responsible for God knows how many deaths. The worst part is how easy it was. How simple. Just math and physics and pulling a trigger. 3.4 seconds and a man stops existing. That's the job. I know, but it shouldn't be that easy. Would you rather it was hard? I don't know. Maybe. At least then it would feel like it cost something. It did cost something, you just haven't figured out what yet. She looked at him. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. Like she'd forgotten how. How do you go home after this? How do you sit at your son's soccer game, or your daughter's dance recital, or your brother's wedding and pretend you're normal? Pretend you don't carry this? Marcus thought about Rachel, thought about Tyler, thought about the 48 unsent letters and the one he'd write tonight, number 49, the one where he'd tell her he was coming home, that this was his last deployment, that he was choosing them over this. You don't pretend. You just show up, and you let the people who love you help carry it. That's what they're there for. What if nobody can help carry it? What if it's too heavy? Then you find other people who carry the same weight, and you carry it together. Ray appeared around the corner. He looked older than his 52 years, tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. We need to debrief, but I'm pushing it to tomorrow morning. You both need rest. We're fine, Chief. No, you're not. And that's okay. You just did something that most people couldn't do. Hell, that most snipers couldn't do. Take the night. Process it. We'll talk tomorrow. He started to walk away, then stopped. Sarah, what you said to Hardwick about not wanting recognition, I respect that, but you need to understand something. Whether you want it or not, people will know. This shot will be studied, analyzed, taught in sniper schools. You can't stop that. I can refuse to be part of it. Yeah, you can, but the shot still happened. The record still stands. You're the longest confirmed kill in naval special warfare history, male or female. That's not going away. It should, because celebrating killing at 3,000 meters means we've lost something important about what we are. Ray nodded slowly. Maybe you're right, but that's above my pay grade. For now, get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. He left. Marcus and Sarah sat in silence. Around them, the base continued its eternal rhythm. Generators humming, vehicles moving, the machinery of war grinding forward because war never stopped for individual conscience. That night, Marcus wrote his 49th letter to Rachel. But this time, he didn't put it with the others. This time, he found an envelope, a stamp, an address he'd written so many times he could do it blindfolded. Dear Rachel, I'm coming home. For real this time. Not for 2 weeks of leave before another deployment. Coming home to stay. I've done 4 deployments. I've seen enough. I've done enough. I choose you. I choose Tyler. I choose the life we were supposed to have before I convinced myself that this mattered more. Today I watched someone make an impossible shot, 3,000 meters, beyond the range of her weapon, beyond the limits of what should be possible. And she did it because someone ordered her to, because the mission required it, because that's what we do. But after she made the shot, I saw something in her eyes, something breaking, something that reminded me of what I've been doing to myself for the past 10 years. Carrying weight until you don't remember what it feels like to be light. Making hard choices until you forget there used to be easy ones. I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want Tyler to grow up wondering why daddy's always angry, why daddy stares at nothing, why daddy flinches at loud noises and can't sleep through the night. So I'm coming home, and I'm staying home, and I'm going to learn how to be a husband and father again. I'm going to learn how to carry this weight without letting it crush me. With your help, if you'll still have me. I love you. I'm sorry it took me so long to remember that love matters more than missions. He sealed the envelope, walked it to the outgoing mail, dropped it in the box. It felt like releasing something heavy he'd been carrying for years. When he got back to his quarters, Sarah was sitting on the steps. Can't sleep? No, me neither. They sat together in the darkness. Above them, stars wheeled across the sky. The same stars that had watched this land tear itself apart for thousands of years. The same stars that would watch long after they were gone. Webb, do you think it matters, what we do here? Marcus thought about that question. Had been thinking about it for 4 deployments. For 20 years. For every friend he'd lost and every letter home he'd written. I used to think it did. Now I think maybe the only thing that matters is who we are when we go home. Whether we're still human, whether we can still love, whether we can still see beauty in things that aren't broken. That's not much of an answer. It's the only one I have. She was quiet for a long moment. My brother's wedding is in March. I think I'm going to go. Good, you should. Will you be there, back in the world? Yeah, I'm done after this. Going home to Oregon, going to open a gun range, teach marksmanship to police and civilians. Something where I can pass on what I know without having to kill anyone. That sounds nice. What about you? What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Maybe go back to Montana, run the family ranch, teach my nieces and nephews how to shoot. Something quiet. Quiet sounds good. Yeah, it does. They sat in silence. 2 soldiers at the end of their wars, carrying weights they'd never fully put down, but learning to distribute them better. Learning that surviving combat wasn't the same as surviving what came after. The next morning, the debrief was thorough. Intelligence officers, operations officers, even a team from Naval Special Warfare Development Group who wanted to understand exactly how Sarah had made the shot. They measured everything, calculated everything, turned her intuition into numbers and her skill into data points. She answered their questions with professional detachment. Wind speed, temperature, barometric pressure, bullet drop, flight time, all the technical details that turn killing into science. But when they asked her how she knew she could make the shot, she just shook her head. I didn't know. I calculated the odds at 50-50, maybe 60-40. I took the shot because it needed to be taken and I was the only one who could take it. That's not very scientific. No, but that's how it works. Sometimes you have to trust something beyond the math. The intelligence officers nodded like they understood, but Marcus knew they couldn't, because understanding required being there, required making impossible choices with incomplete information and living with the consequences. After the debrief, Lieutenant Colonel Hendricks pulled Sarah aside. Staff Sergeant McKenna, I want you to know that regardless of your feelings about recognition, what you did matters. You ended a 3-year operation. You saved American lives. That has value. Does it? Or did I just create a vacuum that someone else will fill? Another Zulfikar, another commander, another 3-year operation. Hendricks was quiet for a moment. Maybe, probably, but that's not on you. You did your job. You did it better than anyone could have asked. The rest is above your pay grade. With respect, ma'am, I'm tired of things being above my pay grade. I'm tired of making life and death decisions based on intelligence that might be wrong. I'm tired of being told to trust the system when the system keeps failing. So what are you going to do? I'm going to finish my contract. I'm going to go home. And I'm going to try to remember who I was before I learned how to kill a people at 3,000 meters. Hendricks nodded slowly. That sounds like a good plan. For what it's worth, I think you're one of the best operators I've ever worked with. The military will be losing something important when you leave. Maybe, but I'll be gaining something more important, myself. The extraction came 2 days later. Alpha Team loading onto a Chinook for the flight to Bagram. From there, transport back to the States, back to the world, back to lives that had continued without them and would have to make room for them again. Marcus sat next to Sarah on the helicopter, watched Afghanistan disappear below them, mountains and valleys and compounds where people lived and died and barely noticed the American soldiers passing through their wars. Ray sat across from them. He was holding his father's dog tags, turning them over in his hands like a rosary. You know what I realize? My father died in Khe Sanh in 1968. I've spent 30 years in the military trying to make his death mean something, trying to prove that his sacrifice mattered. But maybe it didn't. Maybe he just died following orders. And maybe that's all any of us do. Maybe, Marcus said. Or maybe the meaning isn't in the orders. It's in who we choose to be despite them. That's pretty philosophical for a spotter. I've had a lot of time to think. The helicopter banked, turned west, toward Bagram, toward home, toward futures that were uncertain but at least were theirs to choose. Sarah spoke without opening her eyes. Webb, when you open that gun range in Oregon, if you need an instructor, someone to teach the advanced courses, let me know. You serious? Yeah, I think I am. I'm good at this. I should use that to help people who are trying to protect others, not just to kill people because someone 3,000 miles away decided they needed to die. Marcus smiled, first genuine smile in months. Okay, deal. McKenna and Webb's Marksmanship Academy has a ring to it. Terrible name. We'll workshop it. Jimmy Brennan was sitting near the ramp, staring out at the mountains. He looked older than his 22 years, like Afghanistan had aged him a decade in 3 months. Marcus knew that look, wore it himself. He moved to sit next to the kid. You okay? Jimmy didn't answer immediately. I keep thinking about those kids, the ones in the compound during the raid. They were the same age as my daughter, and we almost killed them. But we didn't. No, because McKenna made the right call, because she saw something the rest of us missed. But what happens when she's not there? When someone else is making the call? Then someone else makes the call, and hopefully they get it right. And if they don't, hopefully they learn from it and do better next time. That's a lot of hope. Yeah, it is, but hope's all we got. The helicopter flew on, carrying 13 souls back from war, each one carrying their own weight, each one wondering what came next, each one hoping that the person they used to be was still waiting somewhere on the other side of all this violence. Marcus looked at Sarah, at Ray, at Jimmy, at all the men who'd become more than teammates, who'd become the only family that understood what they'd seen and done and carried. And he thought about Tyler, about teaching his son to throw a baseball, about Rachel's hand in his, about mornings without the sound of helicopters and nights without the dreams. He thought about a ranch in Montana where a woman could teach people to shoot without killing them, about a gun range in Oregon where skills learned in war could be transformed into something that protected instead of destroyed. He thought about a future where the weight didn't disappear but became manageable, where the memories didn't fade but learned to coexist with new ones, where being a warrior didn't mean you couldn't also be human. The helicopter crossed the mountains. Below them, Afghanistan continued, ancient, indifferent, eternal. A land that had seen empires come and go, that had watched Alexander and the Soviets and now the Americans, that would watch whoever came next. But Marcus Webb wasn't watching anymore. He was looking forward, toward home, toward healing, toward a life that was waiting to be lived. And beside him, Sarah McKenna was doing the same. 2 soldiers, at the end of their wars, carrying weights they'd never fully put down, but learning finally that surviving wasn't enough. You had to find a way to live. The flight from Bagram to Ramstein Air Base in Germany took 14 hours. Marcus Webb spent most of it staring out the window at clouds that looked like cotton and mountains that looked like wrinkles in old skin. Sarah McKenna sat 2 rows back, earbuds in, eyes closed. But Marcus knew she wasn't sleeping. You learned to tell the difference. Real sleep had a softness to it, a letting go. What Sarah was doing was hiding. The C-17 transport was packed with soldiers rotating home. Some were loud, telling stories, laughing. The ones who were going back to families and barbecues and lives that had waited for them. Others were quiet, staring at nothing. The ones who knew that home was going to be harder than combat, that the war didn't end when you left the war zone. It just changed theaters. Ray Kowalski sat across the aisle. His father's dog tags rested on his chest outside his uniform. First time Marcus had ever seen him wear them that way, like he'd stopped hiding something, or stopped pretending something wasn't there. At Ramstein, they had a 6-hour layover. Enough time to shower, eat hot food that didn't taste like cardboard, call home if you still had someone to call. Marcus found a phone bank in the transit terminal, stared at it for 10 minutes before he picked up the receiver, dialed a number he knew by heart, listened to it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Rachel answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was cautious, guarded, the voice of someone who'd been disappointed too many times to let hope in easily. Marcus. Hey, you're calling from Germany? Yeah, we're rotating home. I'll be stateside in 36 hours. She was quiet for a long moment. Marcus could hear Tyler in the background, asking who was on the phone, asking if it was Daddy. Rachel's hand covering the receiver. Muffled words he couldn't make out. Did you get my letter? What letter? I mailed it 3 days ago. From Afghanistan. Nothing's arrived yet. Marcus felt something cold move through his chest. The letter. The one where he'd promised to come home. The one where he'd chosen her. 49 unsent letters, and the one he'd actually mailed was lost somewhere in military postal limbo. I'm coming home, Rachel. For good this time. No more deployments. I'm done. The silence stretched out, long enough that Marcus thought the connection had dropped. Then Rachel's voice came back, small, tired. You said that last time. I know. And the time before that? I know. So why should I believe you now? Because something changed. Because I watched someone make an impossible shot and then break under the weight of it. Because I realized that being good at war doesn't make war good. Because I want to teach Tyler to throw a baseball before he's too old to want me to. Rachel was crying. He could hear it. Soft, trying to hide it. I can't do this again, Marcus. I can't spend another year waiting for the knock on the door. Waiting for the chaplain. Tyler needs a father. I need a husband, not a ghost who visits twice a year. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I chose this over you for so long. I'm sorry I thought the mission mattered more than our lives. I was wrong. What changed, really? What actually changed? I saw what it cost to be right, and I realized the cost is too high. The line was quiet. Marcus could picture her in their kitchen, could see the way she'd be holding the phone, the way her other hand would be pressed against her forehead, the weight she'd been carrying alone. When you get home, Rachel finally said, we're going to have a long talk about what happens next, about what you want, what I want, what Tyler needs. Okay, but if you deploy again, if you choose them over us one more time, I'm gone. I can't keep being the woman who waits. I understand. Do you? Because I don't think you do. I don't think you understand what it's like to be the one left behind. To be the one explaining to a 6-year-old why Daddy missed his birthday again. Why Daddy wasn't there for his first day of school. Why Daddy sends letters but never calls. You're right, I don't. But I want to learn. I want to be there. I want to be the father Tyler deserves, the husband you deserve. Rachel took a breath, let it out slowly. I love you, Marcus. I've always loved you. But love isn't enough, not anymore. I know. Come home. We'll figure it out. She hung up. Marcus stood there holding the dead phone. Around him, other soldiers were making their own calls. Some were smiling, some were crying. All of them were trying to bridge the gap between who they'd been overseas and who they needed to be at home. He found Sarah in the chow hall. She was picking at a tray of food, not eating, just moving it around, creating the appearance of normalcy. Marcus sat down across from her. You call anyone? No. Your brother? He's probably busy. Wedding planning. I'll see him when I see him. That's in 2 months. Yeah. You going to wait 2 months to tell him you're coming home? Sarah put down her fork, looked at Marcus with eyes that had too much distance in them. I don't know how to talk to him anymore. I don't know how to talk to any who wasn't there. They asked how it was, and I could tell them about the heat or the food or the landscape. But how do I tell them about making a 3,000-meter shot? About killing a man I never met because someone decided he needed to die? About feeling nothing when I should feel something and feeling everything when I should feel nothing? You don't. Not at first. You just show up. Be present. Let them remind you who you used to be. What if I don't remember who I used to be? Then you figure out who you are now. Jimmy Brennan found them an hour later. He looked nervous, young. The way soldiers look when they're about to ask something they're afraid to know the answer to. Sergeant Webb, can I talk to you, both of you? They moved to a quiet corner of the terminal, away from the crowds, away from the noise. Jimmy's hands were shaking slightly. I've been thinking about what we do, about those kids in the compound, about Sergeant McKenna's shot, about all of it. Okay, and I don't think I can do it anymore. The words hung in the air. Marcus waited, knew there was more coming. My daughter's 3 months old. I've seen her twice. For 2 weeks total. She doesn't know who I am. When I hold her, she cries because I'm a stranger. And Jennifer looks at me like she's not sure who I am either. That's hard. It's more than hard. It's wrong. I joined up because my family needed the money. Because the recruiter said I'd get to serve my country, learn a trade, get my life together. But what I've learned is how to kill people. And I'm good at it. And that scares the hell out of me. Sarah spoke for the first time. Being scared means you're still human. That matters. Does it? Because I'm scared that if I keep doing this, I'll lose the part of me that knows it should be scary. I'll become like some of the guys I've met, the ones who've been doing this so long, they don't feel it anymore. Marcus thought about the 49 letters, about Rachel's voice on the phone, about the cost of being good at something that destroyed part of you every time you did it. What are you going to do? I'm getting out, finishing my contract, going home, getting a job that doesn't involve rifles, being a father, being a husband, being normal. Normal's overrated. Maybe, but I'll take it over this. After Jimmy left, Sarah and Marcus sat in silence. Around them, the terminal continued its eternal rhythm. Soldiers coming, soldiers going. The machinery of war grinding forward because war never stopped for individual conscience. What do you think? Sarah finally asked. About Jimmy. I think he's making the right choice. For him, for his family. What about us? Are we making the right choice? Marcus looked at her. I think we're making the only choice we can make and still live with ourselves. The flight from Ramstein to Dover Air Force Base took 8 hours. They landed at 0300 local time, processed through customs, turned in their weapons, signed paperwork that officially returned them to the continental United States but unofficially marked them as different from everyone who'd never left. Ray pulled Marcus aside before they dispersed. I need to tell you something about Hardwick. Okay, Major Kim's investigation found evidence. Radio intercepts, encrypted communications. The leak that compromised our position during the sandstorm. It wasn't a civilian contractor. Who was it? One of Hardwick's staff officers, Captain Thomas Yates. He was passing information to a local interpreter who was Taliban intelligence. Jesus, why? They were blackmailing him. Had photos of him with an Afghan woman. Cultural liaison he'd been working with. If it got out, court-martial. Dishonorable discharge. Prison time. So he sold us out to save his career. Yeah. What happened to him? He's in custody, facing charges. Hardwick's trying to bury it. Says it reflects badly on his command. Of course he is. Ray's face was hard, carved from stone. I'm testifying at the court-martial about what happened, about how we almost got killed because Hardwick cared more about covering his ass than protecting his men. That'll end your career, probably. So why do it? Because I'm tired of good men dying to protect bad officers. Because if I don't speak up, who will? Marcus nodded slowly. I'll testify too, if you need me. Thanks. What about Sarah? She doesn't know yet. I'll tell her. Give her the choice. They stood in the pre-dawn darkness of Delaware. Somewhere nearby, families were sleeping. Kids were dreaming. People were living lives that had nothing to do with war or betrayal or the cost of keeping secrets. Ray pulled out his father's dog tags one more time. My old man died for nothing. Kaysan. Holding a hill that didn't matter. Following orders from officers who didn't care. I always told myself his death meant something, that his sacrifice mattered. But maybe it didn't. Maybe he just died. And maybe that's okay, because what matters isn't whether his death had meaning. It's whether his life did. Did it? I don't know. He died before I was born. I never got to ask him. What about your life? Does it have meaning? Ray was quiet for a long moment. Ask me in a year, after the trial, after I figure out who I am when I'm not Master Chief Kowalski. They parted ways. Ray heading to Virginia, Marcus heading to Oregon, Sarah heading to Montana. 3 soldiers scattering to different corners of the country, each one carrying weight, each one trying to figure out how to set it down. The bus ride from Dover to Portland took 2 days. Marcus watched America scroll past the window. Towns he'd never seen, lives he'd never know, a country that was fighting wars most of its citizens barely thought about. He called Rachel from a rest stop in Pennsylvania. I'm in the States. I'll be home tomorrow. Okay. Is Tyler there? He's at school. Can I talk to him when he gets home? Marcus, I need to tell you something. The way she said it made his stomach tighten. Okay, Tyler's been having nightmares about you not coming home. His teacher says he's been withdrawn, angry, acting out. How long? Since your last deployment. It's gotten worse. Why didn't you tell me? Because what were you going to do? Come home? You were in Afghanistan, you had a mission. I handled it. You shouldn't have had to handle it alone. No, I shouldn't have. But I did. Because that's what military spouses do. We handle it. We carry it. We pretend everything's fine while our kids fall apart and our marriages dissolve and our lives are on hold waiting for you to come back. Rachel was crying now, not trying to hide it. I'm sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix it. Sorry doesn't give Tyler back the father he lost. Sorry doesn't give me back the husband I married. Tell me how to fix it. I don't know if you can. I don't know if anyone can. All I know is you're coming home and we're going to try. But Marcus, if it doesn't work, if you can't be present, if you can't be here, really here, not just physically but emotionally, then I need you to let us go. The line went quiet. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, I understand. Good. Call me when you get to Portland. We'll figure out the rest. She hung up. Marcus stood in the parking lot of a rest stop in Pennsylvania, surrounded by families on road trips and truckers grabbing coffee, and felt the weight of his choices pressing down like gravity had doubled. He arrived in Portland at 1800 hours on a Tuesday. Rachel picked him up at the bus station. She looked older, tired, beautiful in the way that women who've survived something difficult are beautiful. They didn't hug, didn't kiss, just looked at each other like they were trying to remember who the other person used to be. Tyler wasn't with her. Where is he? At my mom's. I thought we should talk first, before you see him. They drove to their house in silence. The house Marcus had bought 6 years ago with VA loan. The house he'd spent maybe 8 months in total. The house that belonged to Rachel and Tyler more than it belonged to him. Inside, everything was familiar and foreign. His running shoes by the door, his coffee mug in the cabinet, his life preserved like a museum exhibit of someone who used to live there. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd eaten breakfast on their first morning as homeowners, where they'd celebrated Tyler's first birthday, where Rachel had probably cried alone more times than Marcus could count. She didn't waste time. I need to know if you're serious, about being done, about staying home, because I can't do this again. I can't get my hopes up just to watch you leave. I mailed my retirement paperwork from Bagram. 20 years of service. I'm eligible. I'm done. What are you going to do? I'm going to open a gun range with Sarah McKenna, teaching marksmanship, passing on skills without the killing. That's your plan? That's the beginning of my plan. The rest involves being Tyler's father, being your husband, learning how to be present. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. I want to believe you. God, I want to believe you. But you've said this before, you've promised before, and every time something pulled you back. Some mission, some obligation, some part of you that needs the war more than it needs us. That's not true, isn't it? Be honest, Marcus. The last time you were home, you were counting the days until you could leave. You couldn't sleep, couldn't sit still, couldn't be here without thinking about there. Marcus felt the truth of her words like a physical blow. You're right, I was, but that was before. Before what? Before I watched someone break under the weight of being too good at killing. Before I realized that surviving combat doesn't mean surviving what comes after. Before I understood that I was losing you and Tyler, and I couldn't get you back. Rachel wiped her eyes. I'm scared, Marcus. I'm scared you'll try to be here and can't. I'm scared Tyler will get attached and then watch you leave again. I'm scared I'll fall in love with you all over again just to have my heart broken. Then don't fall in love with me yet. Just let me show you. Day by day, let me prove that I can do this. How long? However long it takes. She nodded slowly, stood up, walked to the window, looked out at a backyard that needed mowing, at a life that needed attention. Tyler doesn't remember you, not really. He knows you from photos, from video calls. But he doesn't know you as Dad, not the way he should. I know, so you're going to have to earn that. He's not going to just accept you because you're his father. You're going to have to show him who you are and let him decide if he wants you in his life. I understand. And Marcus, if you hurt him, if you make him promises you can't keep, if you leave him the way your father left you, I will never forgive you. The words hit like bullets because Rachel knew. Knew about Marcus's father walking out when he was 8. Knew about the abandonment that had driven Marcus to join the military, to prove he was loyal, to prove he could be the man his father wasn't. I won't, I promise. Don't promise, just do it. She turned back to face him. I'm picking Tyler up in an hour. You can meet him then. But tonight you're sleeping in the guest room. We're not married anymore. Not really. We're two people who used to know each other trying to figure out if we still can. Okay, and Marcus, welcome home. But the way she said it didn't sound like welcome. It sounded like warning. Tyler came home at 1900 hours, a small boy with Rachel's eyes and Marcus's stubborn jaw. He stopped in the doorway when he saw Marcus, froze like he'd seen a ghost. Tyler, Rachel said softly, this is your dad. The boy didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at Marcus with eyes that held too much caution for a 6-year-old. Marcus got down on one knee, made himself smaller, less threatening. Hey, buddy. Nothing. I know I haven't been around much. I know you don't really know me, but I'm home now, and I'm going to stay home, and I'd really like to get to know you. Tyler looked at his mother. She nodded, gave him permission to engage. You're a soldier. I was. I'm not anymore. Mom says soldiers fight bad guys. That's part of it. But mostly soldiers protect people. That's what I was doing. Protecting people. Were you protecting me? The question cut deeper than Marcus expected, because the honest answer was no. He'd been protecting strangers, following orders, doing a job. But he hadn't been protecting his son, hadn't been there for nightmares or scraped knees or first days of school. I was trying to make the world safer, for everyone, including you. It was a politician's answer, a deflection, and Tyler was young, but he wasn't stupid. He saw through it. Jimmy's dad is home every night. He coaches our baseball team. He came to our school play. Marcus felt each word like a knife. I know, and I'm sorry I wasn't there, but I'm here now. For how long? Forever. That's a long time. Yeah, it is. Tyler thought about this, weighing something in his 6-year-old mind, making decisions that shouldn't be his to make. Can you throw a baseball? Yes. Will you teach me? I'd love to. Okay, but if you leave again, I'm not going to be sad, because I don't know you enough to be sad. The honesty of children is brutal because it's true. Tyler was protecting himself, building walls the way Marcus had built them after his own father left. The cycle continuing, the damage passing down through generations. That's fair. Tyler went to his room, closed the door. Marcus stood in the living room feeling like he'd just failed an exam he'd been preparing for his entire life. Rachel put her hand on his shoulder. Give him time. He's been hurt. He's protecting himself. But he's a good kid. He wants a father. He just needs to know you're not going to disappear. How do I prove that? You show up every day, no matter how hard it gets. You just show up. That night, Marcus lay awake in the guest room. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet. He'd spent 4 deployments, sleeping in cots, in sleeping bags, and vehicles. Sleeping light because deep sleep meant vulnerability. Now he was in a house with locks and alarms and safety, and he couldn't sleep at all. At 0200, he heard footsteps in the hall, small ones, Tyler's door opening, the sound of crying. Marcus got up, moved quietly down the hall. Tyler's room was dark except for a nightlight shaped like a baseball. The boy was sitting up in bed, crying silently, trying not to wake anyone. Marcus knocked softly on the doorframe. Hey, you okay? Tyler jumped, wiped his eyes, tried to hide the tears. I'm fine. Mind if I come in? Tyler shrugged, the universal gesture of children who want help but don't know how to ask for it. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed. I used to have nightmares too. Still do sometimes. About what? About things I've seen, things I've done, things I can't change. Tyler was quiet for a moment. I dream that you don't come home, that men in uniforms come to our door and tell Mom you're not coming back. And she cries. And I try to be strong, but I'm not strong enough. Marcus felt his throat tighten. That must be scary. Mom says you're done being a soldier, that you're staying home, but I don't believe her. Why not? Because grown-ups lie, not mean lies, but they say things they hope are true even when they're not. Tyler was right. Adults did lie. They called it being optimistic or positive or protecting children from harsh realities. But it was still lying. You're right. Grown-ups do that sometimes. So I'm not going to tell you I'll never leave, because I might have to go to the store, or to work, or on a trip. But I will tell you this, I will always come back, and I will never leave because I want to. Only because I have to, and there's a difference. What's the difference? Wanting to leave means you don't care about the people you are leaving. Having to leave means you care so much that you'd rather stay, but you can't. Does that make sense? Tyler thought about it. I guess. I care about you, Tyler, more than you know, more than I've been able to show. And I'm sorry it took me so long to get here. To understand that being your dad is more important than anything else. Even saving people? Even that. Tyler lay back down, pulled his blanket up. For a moment, Marcus thought the conversation was over. Then the boy spoke again. Can you stay until I fall asleep? Yeah, I can do that. Marcus sat on the floor next to Tyler's bed, listened to his son's breathing slow, watched him drift into sleep, and realized that this right here, this was what he'd been fighting for. Not some abstract concept of freedom or security. This, a 6-year-old boy sleeping safely in his own bed, knowing his father was there. He stayed until dawn, watching Tyler sleep, and for the first time in years, Marcus Webb felt like he might actually be in the right place. The phone rang at 0700, Sarah's number. Webb. Hey, you home? Yeah, just got in yesterday. How is it? Harder than I expected. My son doesn't know me. My wife doesn't trust me. I'm sleeping in the guest room, living like a stranger in my own house. Sarah was quiet for a moment. I called my brother, told him I was coming to the wedding. What did he say? He cried, said he didn't think I'd make it, said he'd almost given up on me. Sounds familiar. Yeah, I'm starting to think we all gave up on each other a little bit. We were so focused on the mission that we forgot what we were supposed to be coming home to. So what do? We do what Ray said. We show up. We keep showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. You still want to do the gun range thing? Yeah, more than ever. I think teaching people to protect themselves without becoming what we became, that matters. When do we start? Give me 6 months. Let me figure out how to be a father, how to be a husband. Then we'll figure out how to be business partners. Sounds like a plan. Sarah, thanks for calling, for checking in. Not a lot of people do that. We're all we've got, Webb. The only people who understand what we carry. We have to look out for each other. Yeah, we do. After he hung up, Marcus found Rachel in the kitchen, making coffee, going through the morning routine she'd developed without him. That was Sarah, checking in. How is she? Trying to figure out the same things I am, how to be human again. Rachel poured 2 cups of coffee, handed one to Marcus. I heard you last night, in Tyler's room. I didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. I was already awake. I'm always awake at 2 in the morning. It's when I do my best worrying. What do you worry about? Everything. Whether Tyler's okay, whether we'll make it, whether you'll be able to stay, whether I'm strong enough to keep doing this if you can't. You're the strongest person I know. I don't feel strong. I feel tired. I feel like I've been fighting a war alone while you were fighting one with a team. You're right, and I'm sorry. I should have been here, fighting with you, being your teammate. Rachel sat down at the table, wrapped her hands around her coffee mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. Marcus, I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen. Don't try to fix it. Don't make promises. Just hear me. Okay, I almost left. 6 months ago, I had the divorce papers drawn up, had them sitting on this table, was ready to sign them. What stopped you? Tyler, he asked me why you kept leaving if you loved us, and I didn't have an answer. Because I didn't understand it either, but I realized that if I left, I'd be doing to him what your father did to you, taking away his dad, making him grow up without a father. And I couldn't do that. So you stayed for Tyler. I stayed for both of you, because I still love you, even when I don't want to, even when it hurts, even when it would be easier to walk away. Marcus felt tears building behind his eyes, the first real tears in years. I don't deserve you. No, you don't. But that's not how love works. It's not about deserving. It's about choosing. Every day, choosing to stay, choosing to try, choosing to believe that something broken can be fixed. Can we be fixed? I don't know, but I'm willing to find out, if you are. I am. Then that's where we start. The morning sun came through the kitchen window, warm, gentle, the kind of light that made everything look softer than it was. Marcus sat with his wife, drank coffee, talked about small things, Tyler's school, the mortgage, the lawn that needed mowing, normal things, civilian things, the kind of things he'd thought were boring before he understood how precious boring could be. And for the first time in years, Marcus Webb felt like he might actually make it home. Not to a place, but to a life. to the people who'd been waiting for him to remember that they mattered more than missions, to a future where the weight didn't disappear, but became shared, where the burden of war transformed into the work of peace, where a soldier learned to be a man again, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of showing up when it would be easier to leave. That was the real war, the one that came after, the one nobody trained you for, the one you had to fight alone, except you weren't alone, not if you let the people who loved you help carry the weight. Marcus looked at Rachel, saw the woman who'd waited, who'd carried their family, who'd earned the right to be angry and hurt and done with him, but who'd chosen to stay anyway. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. I came close. I know, and I'm grateful you didn't." She smiled, small, tired, but real. "Don't make me regret it." "I won't." Outside, somewhere in the neighborhood, a child was laughing. Life continuing, the world spinning, people living and loving and making their own way through their own wars. And in a kitchen in Oregon, two people who'd almost lost each other were trying to find their way back. It wasn't poetry, it wasn't easy, but it was real, and real was all that mattered now. The war was over. The real work was just beginning. 3 months passed like water through cupped hands. Marcus Webb learned that rebuilding trust was harder than any mission he had ever run. There were no tactics for this, no training manual, no clear objective beyond showing up every single day and hoping it was enough. Tyler's baseball season started in February. Marcus became the assistant coach, not because he knew anything about coaching kids, but because it meant 3 practices a week and games every Saturday. It meant being there, being present, being the father in the bleachers instead of the ghost in the photographs. The first practice was awkward. The other fathers knew each other, had been doing this for years, had the easy camaraderie of men who'd shared sidelines and carpools and pizza parties. Marcus stood apart, the new guy, the one who'd just shown up, the one whose son still called him Marcus instead of Dad. But he showed up, and the next practice, and the next. Tyler was small for his age, not good at baseball, struck out more than he hit, cried once after dropping an easy fly ball. Marcus wanted to tell him it was okay, wanted to say that failure was just another form of learning, but he didn't have the right yet, hadn't earned the privilege of comfort. So he just picked up the ball, handed it to his son, said nothing. Sometimes nothing was all you could offer. Rachel watched from the car. Marcus could feel her eyes on him, evaluating, measuring, keeping score in a game where the rules kept changing. At night, they still slept in separate rooms, still moved around each other like dancers who'd forgotten the steps, still carried the weight of all the years he'd been gone and she'd been alone. But they were trying. Some days that felt like enough. Other days it felt like nothing. The call came from Ray in mid-March. His voice on the phone was different, harder, older. "The court-martial's next week. Captain Yates. The leak. I'm testifying on Thursday. You need anything? Just tell me I'm doing the right thing. Because my command is telling me I'm not. They're saying I'm destroying a young officer's career over a mistake, that I should let it go. It wasn't a mistake. It was betrayal. People almost died. I know, but the pressure's intense. Hardwick's got friends, high-ranking friends. They're making it clear that if I testify, my career is over." "Your career was already over the moment you decided to tell the truth." Ray laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. "Yeah, I guess it was. You want me there? For the testimony?" "No, but I need you to do something else." "What?" "Take care of Sarah. She's not doing well. Won't answer my calls. Won't talk to anyone. I'm worried about her." "Where is she?" "Montana, her family's ranch. She's been there since she got back, alone. I think she's falling apart and nobody's there to catch her." "I'll go." "Webb, thank you." "What are brothers for?" The drive from Portland to Montana took 14 hours. Marcus left at 0400 on a Wednesday. Told Rachel he'd be back in 3 days. Told Tyler he had to help a friend. The boy just nodded. Still didn't trust that Marcus would come back. Still building walls to protect himself from disappointment. The McKenna ranch was 60 miles outside of Billings, up a dirt road that tested his truck's suspension and his patience. The house was old, weathered, the kind of place that had seen generations of hard living and harder winters. Sarah's truck was parked outside, covered in dust, like it hadn't moved in weeks. Marcus knocked on the door, no answer. Knocked again. Still nothing. He tried the knob, unlocked, because this was Montana and people still left their doors unlocked. Inside, the house was dark, cold. The kind of cold that comes from not bothering to heat a space because you don't care enough to be comfortable. Dishes in the sink, mail piled on the table. The signs of someone living but not living well. He found Sarah in the barn. She was cleaning a rifle. The same M110 she'd carried in Afghanistan, except she wasn't military anymore. Wasn't supposed to have it. But there it was, disassembled, spread across a workbench, each piece gleaming. She looked up when he walked in. Didn't seem surprised. Hey, Webb. Hey, Ray sent you. Yeah, I'm fine. No, you're not. She put down the cleaning rod, looked at him with eyes that had too much distance in them. What gave it away? The fact that I'm living alone in the middle of nowhere? Or the fact that I'm cleaning a rifle that I'm never going to use again? Both. She turned back to the rifle, started reassembling it with movements that were automatic. Muscle memory from 1,000 repetitions. I thought coming home would be the hard part. Turns out coming home was easy. It's staying home that's killing me. Talk to me. What's there to say? I made the longest shot in naval special warfare history. Killed a man from 3,000 meters. Saved American lives. Did my job. And now I wake up at 0300 every morning and don't know what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life. You're supposed to live it. For what? For who? I don't have a wife. Don't have kids. Don't have anything except memories of things I wish I hadn't done and skills I hope I never use again. You have your brother. You have his wedding in 2 weeks. She finished reassembling the rifle. Checked the bolt. Dry fired. The click echoed in the empty barn. I'm not going. Why not? Because I don't belong there. In a church with happy people, celebrating love. I belong here with the ghosts. Sarah, you can't do this. You can't isolate yourself and call it healing. What would you call it? I'd call it survival. And survival isn't the same as living. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since he'd arrived. How do you do it, Webb? How do you wake up every morning and pretend you're normal? How do you sit at your son's baseball games and not see the faces of everyone you've killed? How do you kiss your wife and not wonder if you deserve to be loved? I don't pretend. I just show up. And some days that's all I can do. But I show up anyway, because the alternative is what you're doing. And this isn't living. This is waiting to die. The words hung in the cold air of the barn. Sarah set down the rifle, walked to the door, looked out at land that stretched to the horizon. Land her family had worked for 4 generations. Land that had seen birth and death and everything between. My father used to say that the hardest part of ranching isn't the work. It's the waiting. Waiting for rain, waiting for spring, waiting for things you can't control. He said the key was to keep working, even when you didn't see the point. Because the work itself was the point. Smart man. Yeah, he was. And he'd be ashamed of me right now. Hiding up here. Avoiding life. Avoiding my brother's wedding because I don't know how to be around happiness anymore. So don't avoid it. Come with me. We'll drive down together. You'll go to the wedding. You'll remember what it feels like to be human. And if I can't, then you can't. But at least you tried. She was quiet for a long time. Marcus waited, knew better than to push. Sometimes people needed space to find their own way forward. Finally, she turned back to him. Okay, I'll go, but you're staying for the wedding because I can't do this alone. Deal. They left the next morning. 2 soldiers in a truck, driving south through country that looked like it had been carved by giants. Mountains and valleys and sky that went on forever. They didn't talk much, didn't need to. Sometimes silence was its own form of conversation. Sarah's brother Ethan lived in Bozeman, a small house on a tree-lined street, the kind of place where neighbors knew each other and kids played in yards and life happened at a human pace. He came out when they pulled up. Younger than Sarah, maybe 24, tall, healthy, everything a brother should be. He hugged Sarah like he was afraid she'd disappear. She stood stiff in his embrace, not pushing away, but not returning it either, like she'd forgotten how. I didn't think you'd come. Neither did I. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, me too. His fiancée, Rachel, came out. Not the same Rachel as Marcus's wife. Different person, same name. Life's small ironies. She was kind, warm, the type of person who made you feel welcome without trying. She shook Sarah's hand, then Marcus's. Thank you for bringing her. Ethan's been worried. She needed a push. We all need that sometimes. That night, they had dinner at Ethan's house. Simple food, good conversation. The kind of evening that normal people had without realizing how extraordinary normal was. Marcus watched Sarah, saw her trying, saw her smile at her brother's jokes, saw her listen to Rachel talk about wedding plans, saw her be present in a way she hadn't been in months. But he also saw the effort it took, the way her hands shook slightly when she thought no one was looking, the way she'd go quiet sometimes, drifting, coming back, fighting to stay in the moment. After dinner, Ethan pulled Marcus aside. How bad is she? Pretty bad. Is she going to be okay? I don't know. I hope so. What happened over there? She won't talk about it. She did her job, and her job cost her something. That's all I can say. Ethan nodded. He looked older than 24, like he understood more than he wanted to. When we were kids, Sarah took care of me. After our parents died, she was 17, I was 12. She could have left, gone to college, had her own life, but she stayed, worked the ranch, made sure I graduated high school, made sure I had a future. And then she left for the military, and I never really saw her again. She was protecting you. From what? From what she was becoming. From what the military does to people. She didn't want you to see that. I should have been there for her. You're here now. That's what matters. The wedding was on a Saturday in March. Small ceremony. Maybe 50 people. Church in downtown Bozeman that had been there since Montana was still a territory. Old wood and old hymns and old traditions that connected people to something larger than themselves. Sarah sat in the front row. Marcus sat beside her. She'd asked him to, said she needed someone who understood, someone who carried the same weight. So he sat. And when the music started and Ethan walked down the aisle with his bride, Marcus watched Sarah cry. Not loud, not obvious, just tears streaming down her face that she didn't bother to wipe away. Tears for everything she'd missed, everything she'd sacrificed, everything she'd given up to be a soldier. Tears for the life she'd chosen and the life she'd never have. Marcus put his hand over hers. She gripped it, hard, like she was drowning and he was the only thing keeping her afloat. The ceremony was beautiful. The vows were honest. Two people promising to love each other through whatever came, through good and bad, through presence and absence, through all the things that tested love and made it real. At the reception, Sarah gave a toast. She stood up, glass in hand, looked at her brother and his new wife. I'm not good at speeches. I'm not good at emotions. I'm good at math and wind calls and shooting rifles. But Ethan asked me to say something, so here it is. When our parents died, I didn't know how to be a parent. I was 17. I was scared. I was alone. But I had Ethan, and taking care of him gave me purpose, gave me direction, gave me a reason to keep going. She paused, took a breath, and then I joined the military. And I left, and I missed everything. His graduation, his first job, his first apartment, all the moments that mattered, because I thought I was doing something important, thought I was serving something larger than myself. And maybe I was, but I also missed his life, and I can't get that back. The room was quiet, people uncomfortable with honesty that raw. So my advice is this: don't miss each other's lives. Don't let duty or obligation or anything else pull you apart, because time doesn't stop, and moments don't repeat, and the people you love won't wait forever. She raised her glass. To Ethan and Rachel, may you be present for each other in all the ways I wasn't. Everyone drank. The room erupted in applause. But Sarah just sat down, looked at Marcus. Her eyes were wet. Was that okay? It was perfect. After the reception, Marcus found a payphone, called Rachel, his Rachel, the one in Oregon who was waiting to see if he could actually stay. Hey, how's Montana? Beautiful. Cold. Your kind of place. How's Sarah? Better. She's at her brother's wedding. She gave a toast that made everyone cry, including her, especially her. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Tyler asked about you today. Yeah? Asked when you were coming home. Not if, when. Marcus felt something break open in his chest. What did you tell him? I told him you'd be home on Monday, that you were helping a friend, that you always keep your promises. Do I? You're trying to. That's enough. I miss you. I miss you too. Come home, Marcus. We need you here. I will. I promise. I know. After he hung up, Marcus stood outside the reception hall, watched people dance and laugh and celebrate. Normal people doing normal things. Not carrying weight, not haunted by ghosts, just living. Sarah came out, stood next to him. You okay? Yeah, I think I am. Good, because I've been thinking about the gun range, about teaching instead of fighting, about using what we learned without becoming what we became. Yeah, I'm in. Whenever you're ready, we'll build something good, something that matters, something that helps people without destroying us. Montana or Oregon? Oregon, closer to your family. And I think I need to be around people who are trying to build lives instead of hiding from them. What about your brother? He has his own life now, his own family. He doesn't need me to take care of him anymore. But I think I need to take care of myself. And I can't do that alone on a ranch in the middle of nowhere. Marcus nodded. Partners then. McKenna and Webb's Marksmanship Academy. Terrible name. We'll workshop it. They stood in the March cold. Two soldiers who'd traveled the world to fight wars. Who'd seen things that would haunt them forever. Who'd made impossible shots and impossible choices. Who'd survived combat but nearly died in the aftermath. And who were learning, finally, that survival wasn't enough, that you had to find a way to live, to build, to pass on what you'd learned without the killing, to transform violence into protection, war into peace, ghosts into memories. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. But they'd done harder things, made longer shots, carried heavier weights. This was just the next mission, the one that mattered most, the one they couldn't afford to miss. Ray Kowalski testified on Thursday, March 28th. Marcus wasn't there, but Ray called afterward. His voice was steady, calm, the voice of a man who'd made peace with his choices. How'd it go? I told the truth, all of it, about the leak, about Hardwick knowing the intel was compromised, about him pushing the mission anyway because it looked good for his career. What happened? They court-martialed Yates. Dishonorable discharge. 5 years at Leavenworth. And Hardwick is under investigation. Probably won't face charges, but his career is over. He'll retire quietly, collect his pension, write his book, pretend he was a hero. And you? I'm done. 30 years of service. They offered me retirement with full benefits if I shut up. I told them to keep their benefits. I'll take my 20-year pension and my clear conscience. What are you going to do? I bought a boat. Small one. Nothing fancy. Going to sail up and down the coast. Fish, read, figure out who I am when I'm not Master Chief Kowalski. That sounds good. It does, doesn't it? For the first time in 30 years, I don't have orders, don't have a mission, don't have people depending on me to make life or death decisions. It's terrifying and liberating, and I have no idea what I'm doing. None of us do. We're all just making it up as we go. Ray laughed. It sounded lighter than Marcus had heard in years. Webb, thank you for everything, for being there, for keeping Sarah alive, for doing the right thing even when it cost you. We're brothers. That's what we do. Yeah, we are. 6 months later, McKenna and Webb Precision opened in a small facility outside Portland. Not a fancy operation, just a range, a classroom. 2 instructors who knew what they were doing. They taught police, military, civilians who wanted to learn to protect themselves. But they also taught something else. They taught that shooting was about discipline, about patience, about making the right choice under pressure, about understanding that every shot had consequences, that every decision mattered. Tyler came to the opening, 6 years old now, starting to trust that his father would be there, starting to call him Dad instead of Marcus. Small victories that felt like everything. Rachel came too. They were sleeping in the same room again. Not every night, but some nights, rebuilding slowly, learning each other again, figuring out how to be married to someone who'd changed, who carried scars that would never fully heal, but who was trying, every day, trying to be present, to be there, to be the husband and father he'd promised to be. Sarah taught the advanced courses, long-range precision, wind reading, the skills she'd learned in war, transformed into tools for protection. She was good at it, patient, clear, demanding. Students loved her, respected her, didn't know about the shot, about the 3,000 meters, about the man she'd killed from so far away he never saw it coming. And she didn't tell them because that wasn't the point. The point was teaching them to be better, to be more precise, to understand that shooting was a responsibility, not a game. One day, a young woman came in, 23 years old, military bearing, infantry tattoo on her forearm. She wanted to learn long-range shooting, wanted to try out for sniper school. Sarah worked with her for 3 hours, taught her the basics, wind calls, range estimation, breathing control. At the end, the woman asked a question. Did you serve? Yeah. Combat? Yeah. Did you ever have to take a shot that mattered? Like really mattered? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Marcus watched from the office, wondering what she'd say. Once. I made a shot that ended an operation, saved lives, did what I was supposed to do. How did it feel? Like nothing and everything. Like I'd accomplished something impossible and lost something irreplaceable. Like I'd proven I could do the job and proven I shouldn't have to. Would you do it again? Sarah looked at the young woman, saw herself at that age, eager, capable, not understanding the cost. If I had to, yes, but I hope I never have to. And I hope you never have to either. Because taking a life, even when it's necessary, even when it's right, it costs you something. And you never get it back. You just learn to live with what's left. The woman nodded. Thanks, Sarah. Left. Marcus came out of the office. Think she understood? No, but she will. If she goes through with it, if she makes it to sniper school, if she deploys, if she takes the shot, then she'll understand. They closed up for the night, locked the doors, turned off the lights, drove home through Portland traffic. Normal people living normal lives, going home to families, to dinners, to the small rituals that made life worth living. At home, Tyler was doing homework at the kitchen table. Rachel was cooking. The house smelled like garlic and tomatoes and home. Marcus stopped in the doorway, let himself feel it. The weight of not being in danger, the luxury of being present. Tyler looked up. Dad, can you help me with math? Dad, not Marcus. Dad. Yeah, buddy, I can do that. He sat down next to his son, looked at the homework, long division, the kind of math that seemed impossible until someone showed you how, until you practiced, until you understood that every problem had a solution if you were patient enough to find it. Kind of like life, kind of like coming home, kind of like being a father and a husband and a man who'd been a soldier but wasn't anymore. Just another person trying to make his way through the world without breaking what mattered most. Rachel brought dinner to the table. They ate as a family, talked about Tyler's day, about a spelling test he'd aced, about a friend who'd invited him to a birthday party. Small things, normal things. The fabric of a life that Marcus had almost thrown away. After dinner, Tyler asked if Marcus would read him a story. They went to his room. Tyler picked a book about a knight and a dragon. A simple story. Good versus evil. Clear choices. The kind of world that only existed in children's books. Marcus read. Tyler listened. And somewhere in the middle, the boy fell asleep. Marcus stayed. Watched him breathe. This small person who carried half his DNA and all his hope for the future. This son who'd almost grown up without a father. Who'd been damaged by absence. Who was healing slowly. Who was learning to trust again. Rachel appeared in the doorway. You're good at that. At what? Being his dad. I'm trying. That's all anyone can do. Marcus stood, turned off the light, left the door cracked, followed Rachel down the hall, to their room. The one they shared now. The one where they were learning to be together again, to be intimate, to be honest, to be human in all the ways that war had tried to strip away. They lay in the darkness, not touching, but close. The small distance between them still there, but getting smaller. Rachel spoke first. I'm proud of you. For what? For coming home. For staying. For choosing us. I know it's hard. I know you still wake up at 3 a.m. I know you still have nightmares, but you're here. And that's enough. Is it? For now. Ask me again in a year. Marcus took her hand, felt her fingers close around his. Small, strong, capable. The hand of a woman who'd carried everything while he'd been gone, who'd earned the right to be bitter and angry and done, but who'd chosen grace instead, chosen to try, chosen to believe that something broken could be mended. I love you. I know, and I'm starting to believe you mean it. They fell asleep like that, holding hands. Two people who'd been married for 8 years but were only now learning what that meant, what it required, what it gave back when you did it right. In Montana, Ray Kowalski was on his boat, watching the sun set over water that stretched to the horizon. No orders, no missions, no soldiers depending on him. Just a man in the ocean and the peace that came from knowing you'd told the truth even when it cost everything. In Bozeman, Ethan and his Rachel were building their life, having conversations about maybe starting a family, about how they'd tell their kids about Aunt Sarah, about the woman who'd killed people to protect strangers, who'd made impossible shots and carried impossible weights, who'd sacrificed her own life so others could build theirs. In Portland, Sarah McKenna was in her apartment. Small place, not much, but hers. She was writing a letter to the families of the men she'd killed. Not sending it, never would, but writing it anyway, because she needed to say the words, needed to acknowledge what she'd done, needed to name the cost. I killed your son, your brother, your father. I did it from 3,000 meters away. I did it because I was ordered to. I did it because I was good at it. I did it because if I didn't, Americans would die. And I'm not sorry I did it, but I'm sorry it had to be done. I'm sorry we live in a world where someone like me has to exist. I'm sorry I'm good at killing, and I'm trying to be good at living. I'm sorry your family is incomplete. Mine is too. We all carry something. Some of us carry it in our hearts. Some of us carry it in our rifles. But we all carry it. She finished the letter, folded it, put it in a drawer with all the others. 12 letters now, one for each confirmed kill, a ritual she'd created, a way to remember they were human, that she was human, that killing, even necessary killing, demanded acknowledgement. Then she called her brother, talked about normal things, his job, his marriage, his plans. And for 30 minutes, Sarah McKenna wasn't a sniper, wasn't a soldier, wasn't the woman who'd made the longest shot in naval history. She was just a sister, talking to her brother, being part of a family, being part of life. And when she hung up, she felt lighter. Not healed, maybe never healed, but lighter, like she'd set down some small piece of the weight, like maybe eventually the burden would become bearable. Years would pass. Tyler would grow up, would play baseball through high school, would ask his father about Afghanistan, and Marcus would tell him, not the glory, not the heroics, but the truth, about the portemon, about the weight, about the choosing, and Tyler would understand, would see his father as fully human, flawed and trying, which was all anyone could be. Rachel would stay. The marriage would survive, would become something stronger than it had been, forged in absence and tempered in presence, would become the foundation they both needed. Sarah would teach for 20 years, would train 300 students, would never tell them about the shot, about Zulfikar, about the 3,000 meters, would just teach them to be better, to be precise, to understand that every shot had consequences, and would sleep a little easier each year. The weight never gone, but distributed, shared, bearable. Ray would sail for a decade, would write a book, not about glory, not about heroics, but about the cost of command, about the weight of sending men to die, about his father's dog tags and what they meant, about coming home, about learning to live without orders, without missions, without the clarity that came from military life. And all of them would carry the weight, every day, every night, in dreams and waking moments, in the space between heartbeats, in the pause between breaths. Would carry it because that's what soldiers do, what warriors do, what anyone who's seen combat and survived does. But they would carry it together, connected by invisible threads of shared experience, of understanding, of knowing what it cost and choosing to pay it anyway. And in that carrying, in that sharing, they would find something that looked like peace. Not the absence of war, but the presence of purpose, the knowledge that they'd done hard things, made hard choices, survived hard times, and come out the other side still human, still capable of love, still able to build instead of destroy. And on quiet nights, when the weight felt heaviest, when the memories pressed close, when the ghost whispered in the darkness, they would remember. They would remember that they'd been soldiers, that they'd done their duty, that they'd carried weights no one should have to carry, and that they'd survived, not intact, not unchanged, but survived. And survival, they would understand, was just the beginning. The real work was learning to live, to be present, to be there, to show up, every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. That was the mission that never ended. The war that came after the war. The fight to stay human when everything you'd seen and done tried to strip that away. And they would fight that war the same way they'd fought all the others. Together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of presence at a time, until one day maybe, the weight would feel like strength instead of burden. until the memories would feel like wisdom instead of pain, until the scars would feel like proof of survival instead of evidence of damage, until they would understand finally that coming home wasn't about forgetting the war. It was about remembering how to live despite it. And they would live, they would build, they would love, they would teach, they would be fathers and brothers and sisters and friends. They would be human in all the complicated ways that word meant. They would carry the weight, but they would carry it together. And in that carrying, they would find grace, not redemption. Grace was different, softer, gentler. The acknowledgement that you'd done hard things, made hard choices, carried hard weights, and that you deserved to rest, to heal, to be loved despite your scars. That was the final lesson, the one nobody taught in training, the one you had to learn for yourself. You didn't have to be perfect to be worthy. You just had to be present. You just had to try. You just had to show up. And in the showing up, in the trying, in the presence, you would find what you'd been searching for all along. Not glory, not honor, not medals or recognition or the things the military said mattered, but home, real home, the kind you built with your own hands, the kind you earned through daily choice, the kind that welcomed you despite everything, because of everything, with everything. That was the shot that mattered most, not the one at 3,000 meters, but the one where you chose to stay, chose to love, chose to build instead of destroy. That was the impossible shot they all made, every single day, and they never missed.